Chapter 102. Time passed quickly. Another 5 months passed. Winter came, but the rain did not decrease. The City of Dawn, which was located in the subtropical region, welcomed its second harvest. The second batch of food had matured. The commoners had just brought the food back to the warehouse. William had also spent a lot of money to buy food. Now, 10 large granaries were completely filled, it had to be said. After the construction of public toilets and the use of feces as fertilizer, the yield per moo had increased by at least 2 times. In addition, the population had increased. The flat land on the east and west sides had been reclaimed. With so much food, as well as the fruits and wild beasts in the forest, it could feed at least 200,000 people for a year. Of course, in this magical world, the nutrients contained in the land far exceeded that in the real world. The new city was completely built. It was the same size as the old city. There were only 40,000 elves, but a lot of land was empty, leaving behind many uninhabited buildings. The city walls of the new city were also completed. Not only were they taller, but they were also more threatening. They were 5 meters taller than the old city walls, which meant that they were 15 meters tall and 6 meters wide. The surface of the city walls was poured with a lot of molten iron and copper, making the city walls even more indestructible. Besides the north gate, the passage between the new city and the old city had opened up another 3 small city gates to facilitate communication between the two cities. Ever since the slave trade in the Black Lava Nation disappeared, William could only rob some slaves from the Iron Nation every month. He had no other source of people. Seeing that the military fortress was about to be completed, he estimated that he would not even be able to get the last batch of slaves. But fortunately, a month ago, in the east of the City of Dawn, there was a half-elf gathering point that was more than 70 kilometers away. Due to the frequent attacks of the orcs, and seeing that the military fortress of the Iron Nation was about to be completed, the Lord made up his mind and brought all the half-elves to seek refuge with William. The key point was that they came because of William's identity as a half-elf. In particular, William's royal bloodline was no longer a secret. This was the main reason why they sought refuge with him. Or to put it bluntly, there were many half-elves on the legendary continent, and there were many legendary half-elves. But the history of the half-elves was not that great. No one had built a kingdom. Most of the half-elves had mixed bloodlines. It was almost impossible to find a half-elf with a noble bloodline like William. As a result, the City of Dawn welcomed another 23,000 half-elves. The City of Dawn had become twice as strong as it had been half a year ago. The population was close to 200,000. Their military strength was also growing rapidly, growing from 4,000 soldiers to 15,000 soldiers, which was the size of 5 legions. Now there were 2 elf armies, 2 human armies, and 1 half-elf army. William finally had the chance to withdraw his personal guards and dwarf warriors from the legion, allowing them to maintain their independence. Then, he named the legions one by one. The first legion, which used to be a legion with many races mixed together, now only had human professionals left. He named it the Glory Army. William had high expectations for this legion. The old soldiers had died in battle and the new soldiers had replaced them. Although there were many changes, this legion that he had personally led had brought glory to the City of Dawn. They were invincible. Every soldier was personally chosen by him, and their bloodline was at least at the middle level. If they could win a few more battles, this army would most likely obtain the army soul, which would give them an army buff. The second legion was made up entirely of humans and elves, and all of them were young, beautiful, tall, and valiant young women. He named it the Guardian Army. The purpose of this legion was obvious. It was definitely not to let them fight on the battlefield. If that was the case, the players would curse him to death. Their mission was to protect the City of Dawn. The soldiers of the Guardian Legion would act as patrol guards, city gate guards, and maintain the security of the City of Dawn. Needless to say, The moment the Guardian Legion was formed, all the long-legged female soldiers in chains stood in the central square. Half of the males in the city were pumped up, and they blocked the streets like a watertight waterfall. The 3rd and 4th legions were the most powerful legions under William's command. Because they were made up of pure-blooded elves, the lifespan of elves was too long. They had not fought for many years. But this did not mean that they had no combat power. They could easily change occupations to professionals, and their levels were quite high. The elves who were chosen to join the army were all middle-level professionals above level 40. They were very powerful, but they lacked courage. But for the loyal elves, after a few battles, it was enough for them to form a complete army. William could not help but name them the Night Legion and the Moonlight Legion. This was because the elves in these 2 legions were mostly made up of these 2 elven races. As for the 5th legion, which was the half-elven legion, it was named the Fearless Legion. After William ascertained the loyalty of the half-elf lord, he made him the legion commander of the Fearless Legion. After all, he was a level 61 warrior with an epic bloodline. Now that he had taken the initiative to suck up to William, as the Lord of the City of Dawn, shouldn't he give him a chance? Of course, other than the regular army, there were also up to 2,800 mercenaries. These people were temporarily not very useful, but they were still under William's command. They could be considered a considerable combat power at critical times. 55. Can't I even complete a mission these days? William looked worried. In almost a year, he had almost wiped out all the tribes near the City of Dawn. He had led his troops to settle the slightly threatening tribes. Why? Wasn't it just to get some experience points? The completion of the Lord's new city naturally gave him a lot of experience points as a reward. But he had just reached level 55, and he was still far from level 69. But he did not dare to go to the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation to find missions. He could wander around and find a way to hide his identity. The most important thing was that the atmosphere in these 2 duchies was too tense. He was afraid that if he made a ruckus, he would stir up some monstrous waves that would lead to a war between the 2 sides. That would disrupt his plans, and that would be troublesome. I have no choice. I can only wait for the game to open beta. I can use the Instance Dungeon Crystal to earn large amounts of experience points. If I only rely on missions, when can I reach the peak? William touched his handsome face. Many NPCs with higher bloodlines had leveled up faster than him. If he did not level up, his advantage in attributes would disappear. But just as he was feeling extremely depressed, Lautner pushed open the door and entered with a disregard for his own family. William saw him walk over with a serious expression. He said in a deep voice, "The military fortress of the Iron Nation has sent out 2 legions to the east. That was originally a diplomat of the Iron Nation. Augustine is personally leading the legion. Also, there are many experts following him. It seems that they are planning something big." What? William stood up in joy. Then he restrained his excited expression and took a deep breath. He slowly asked, "Who discovered the news?" "Alec." William narrowed his eyes. "Immediately inform the other legion commanders. Prepare all the best rangers and warriors of the legions. Ask all the assassins under Alec to come over. It's time to clean up the vermin in the city. The dragon-slaying battle not far away." Chapter 103. At night. From afar, the city built on the cliff was like the light of dawn in the darkness. Tens of thousands of magic lamps were hung on the trees on both sides of the streets, on the city walls, and even on some unique buildings. Some rich commoners had even bought some magic lamps and hung them on their second-floor windows. It was obvious that they wanted to show off. The taverns were filled with drunkards, and the brothels were filled with men. When they met their acquaintances, they would reveal a proud and satisfied expression to show that they were awesome and persistent. As for the casinos, there was an endless stream of people who gambled with small amounts of money. Regardless of whether there were too few games in the casinos, their goal was to earn money. They did not care about the games. As the City of Dawn only closed the city gates at night, there was no curfew. Hence, many commoners came out at night. It was impossible for them not to return home at midnight, but in the middle of the night. No one knew that the 3 military camps at the edge of the city walls in the old district had already prepared for battle. The 2 military camps in the new district were also preparing for battle. However, they could not wear armor for this operation. Otherwise, it would cause too much commotion. Furthermore, there were not many soldiers on duty. Almost all the soldiers wore casual clothes. But the commander of the Glory Legion was ghastly pale. He looked at the 500 spies who had been tied up in their sleep. At this moment, in the training ground of the military camp, 500 naked spies were tied up. Their mouths were covered as they knelt on the ground. The soldiers who saw this scene were all shocked and unable to calm down. Although this was an order from the Lord, this large-scale operation to find the spies still puzzled many soldiers. They could not believe that their former comrades were spies, and there were so many of them, especially when this was the Glory Legion, the first legion of the City of Dawn. Legion commander, how is this possible? Someone looked in disbelief at the comrades who were kneeling on the ground. He vaguely remembered that they had fought and trained together. Some of them had even been his blades. How could he believe this? And Lori, Jack, Cligia. A small team leader called out their names. He looked at the deputy legion commander with an ugly expression. He gulped and said, "Could it be that the Lord made a mistake?" Legion Commander Glory was a human with a Grandmaster bloodline, level 58. Julio also clenched his fist. He looked at the soldiers who were discussing among themselves and suddenly shouted, "All of you, shut up! I know you are all confused, but the Lord will personally give you an explanation. Do you still want to be punished by military law? Louis, take those brothers to where they should go. The rest of you, stay here and don't move." As soon as Julio finished speaking, the other soldiers also knew that the Vice Legion commander was angry. They instantly got into formation and stood neatly. However, there were some empty seats that were not filled, because they did not believe that those brothers were spies. When the 500 or so spies who were kneeling on the ground saw this scene, many of their eyes were already filled with tears. But they hated it. They were really spies. They came with a mission, but they never thought that they would slowly become one with it. Many people even thought that they were part of the City of Dawn. A member of the Honor Army. Only now did they realize that traitors were not fit to become soldiers of the Honor Legion. The execution of 3,500 spies would cause a bloodbath in the City of Dawn. Or rather, they would all be beheaded at the same time. There was no chance for them to send a message. And at that moment, it was officially 12:00 at night. In the few seconds that the clock tower's bell rang throughout the entire City of Dawn, William did not personally preside over this execution. Lautner, Alec, Eric, and Odom were all sent out by him. If they could not complete this simple task, they would not be able to live in the future. He was more concerned about the spies in the army that he had chosen. The main gate of the military camp opened. Countless gazes looked over. They wanted the tall and handsome man to give a good explanation. Julio silently stood beside him, not saying a word. William surveyed the soldiers of the Honor Legion and said in a deep voice, "Untie the ropes on their mouths." The ropes were untied very quickly. But no one dared to shout. They lowered their heads and looked at the ground. They did not dare to look at William's eyes. "Raise your heads!" An angry roar reverberated throughout the training ground. Swish! Whether they were kneeling or standing, as if they had received a military order, they quickly raised their heads and looked at the Lord who had led them to glory. "Tell me, did I wrongly accuse you, or are you spies from the Iron Nation?" The entire training ground was silent. Many naked men kneeling on the ground had tears streaming down their faces. But they did not dare to say a word. They only sobbed. "How many times have you cried? Tell me why?" William suddenly roared ferociously. But everyone could see that he raised his head forcefully, as if he was trying to hold back his tears. All sorts of actions. The 500 elite soldiers could only lower their heads even more. When they saw this scene, the other soldiers were not fools. They started to understand that they were not wrongly accused. Many of them even scolded themselves for daring to doubt the Lord's orders, but they could not imagine how heartless a person had to be to become a spy for the Iron Nation. It had to be known. Whether it was the Iron Nation or the Black Lava Nation. Whether it was the commoners, soldiers, or other personnel who worked for the nation, their treatment was very ordinary, even if the elite soldiers were treated better. Compared to the City of Dawn, it was like comparing a stinky stone in a toilet pit to a pearl. The blissful life in the City of Dawn could be seen just by looking at the people who had become commoners from the City of Dawn. William scanned the faces of each of them. He used his insight one by one. Gradually, the orange name was no longer orange. Instead, it was a deeper shade of green. He took another deep breath and said sorrowfully, "You can leave. I'll pretend that I don't have brothers like you. This strand of hair that has never been cut since birth. I'll kill you." William picked up a long and narrow sword and grabbed the long hair draped over his back. He was about to cut it. "My lord, don't. You can't do this." A young soldier knelt and moved forward. His face was full of tears as he shouted. Because they all knew that the elves would not cut their hair. Because they all knew that the elves' hair was like their own limbs. Had anyone seen an elf with short hair? What was this? What kind of friendship was this? The Lord had treated them like his own limbs. But they were going to betray their Lord because of the Iron Nation? Betray their elder brother? "My lord, kill us!" The soldiers lowered their heads in pain. "Legion Commander, we deserve to die. Please kill us." Some of the warriors closed their eyes, waiting for glory to descend upon them. "My lord, we deserve to die. Please don't do this." 500 people knelt on the ground and cried out in pain. But William's sword slashed down. Her long, flowing hair instantly became short. The soldiers of the Legion clenched their fists in pain. As for the 500 people, they were already sobbing and lying paralyzed on the ground. William's hair was blown away by the wind. It slowly fell from William's hand to the ground. He looked at his hand in a daze. No one knew how much pain he was feeling. But their Lord closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he shouted, "Don't you want to leave? Quickly crawl back to where you should be standing. Why are you still kneeling?" "Yes, my lord." A group of tightly bound fellows jumped, crawled, and wiggled like earthworms. It was unknown where they got their strength from, but they jumped, crawled, and twisted like earthworms. Meanwhile, the bell rang. The greatest hidden danger in the City of Dawn had been solved in the most perfect way. Chapter 104. After a night of bloodshed, the City of Dawn did not descend into chaos. Because this mission to eliminate spies did not implicate any innocent people. William's eyes of fire and gold were not a joke. Whoever he stared at was a spy. Actually, many spies had gradually developed a good impression of him. It was just that he was too lazy to slowly subdue them. Otherwise, wouldn't his endowments have been for nothing? Actually, spies would not have red names. Before the war started, they were yellow names like the winged people of the Alliance. But other than a small number of winged people in the City of Dawn, there were no neutral merchants in the City of Dawn. Hence, all those with yellow names had to die. As for why the spies of the Honor Legion were so easily subdued, it was because when he chose them, they had already lived in the City of Dawn for a period of time. Because of various policies and the arrogant way of glory and eternity, it was really a flashy operation. After such a long period of nurturing, he had gained even more good impression points. These people seemed to be yellow names, but that was only before the last veil was lifted. They were nominally part of the Iron Nation. Most importantly, without 1,000 good impression points, it was never considered absolute loyalty. Absolute loyalty did not mean that one could not be betrayed. Mistreating a pet with 1,000 loyalty points would cause the pet's loyalty to drop and it might even run away. This was the same logic. Even with William's endowments, he did not manage to gain all of his subordinates, let alone the others. A person's heart was not something that could be determined by numbers. There were too many factors involved. There were more than 3,000 spies. Who could guarantee that their loyalty points were above 700? Even if their loyalty points were above 700, as time passed, and William's endowments slowly decreased. Among them, in this invisible war, William's endowments were very important. After many people in the city woke up, they saw that the eastern city wall was covered with bloody heads. There were more than 2,000 heads. The feeling of yawning in the morning was as terrifying as seeing the end of the world. Many people were so scared that they almost peed their pants. At this time, some people saw the notice and understood what had happened last night. At this time, out of the 5 legions in the City of Dawn, 3 legions were not in the city. Only the Honor Legion and the Guardian Legion remained in the city. Initially, the barracks were built on the edge of the city wall for 2 reasons. One was to not disturb the lives of the civilians in the city, and the other was to quickly assemble and dispatch troops. They could even climb up the city wall to guard it. As a result, almost no one noticed the departure of the 3 legions at 3 in the morning. The key reason why the Glory Army did not send out their troops was to hide the fact that they had sent 500 spies. They had been sent to guard the mine and let the Iron Nation think that they were all dead. They might even be able to bring their families back in the future. The 3 legions, together with William's personal guards, had a total of more than 9,500 warriors. They formed a black line that was 10,000 meters long and advanced rapidly along the cliff to the east. They were heading to the military fortress 15 miles away. They could not hide their operation to eliminate spies for too long, as the Iron Nation would definitely notice that something was wrong if the spies did not send out magic scrolls for a long time. Time was of the essence, and they had to act in time. Although the Iron Nation's military fortress has yet to be completed, the city wall is 20 meters tall and 7 meters thick. At least 2 rows of soldiers can stand on it. Furthermore, the city wall is very short. Even if the military fortress is only guarded by a legion, they can still set up defensive lines on the city wall. Even if it's not 2 rows, at least 1 row is enough. If we want to take down this military fortress, we will definitely suffer many casualties. Alec, the intelligence chief of the City of Dawn, immediately explained the details to William. William raised his hand and narrowed his eyes. How thick is their city gate? I remember that it's only 7 inches thick, and there's a layer of 3 centimeter thick steel. Furthermore, it hasn't been enchanted? City gate? Alec was taken aback. He quickly nodded. My lord, you are right. They haven't had time to enchant it. But you only asked us to bring the siege ladders. You didn't ask us to bring the siege hammers. Siege hammers? William suddenly ordered. Where are the 2D*MN fools? Come over here. Subsequently, the ground trembled. 2 tall figures walked out from the crowd. It was the level 65 Bloody Crusher and another strong, equally fierce and cruel troll. However, on the troll's head was a huge A-shaped epic helmet. Lautner and the rest were dumbfounded. What were they going to do? William snapped his fingers, pointed at the level 55 troll and said, Siege Iron Doll, do you believe that after the mages bless him and give him a chance to run 100 meters, he'll be able to break through that seemingly indestructible door? The group of people gulped as they looked at the big guy. He was almost 4 meters tall. The troll weighed more than 3,000 kilograms. He wore a set of super high-quality armor and a specially made helmet of extremely high quality. Don't say. It was really possible. However, after crashing into the gate, even if the troll didn't die, he would be retarded. But William didn't care. He had used soul magic to enslave the troll. It was a disposable item. Although the troll also had Grandmaster bloodline, his other abilities were far inferior. He had fewer tricks than Bloody Crusher. It could be said that in order to quickly take down this military fortress, William had used his trump card. He had used up an epic helmet and a troll with Grandmaster bloodline. Was the price not high? As for William's declaration of war, it would definitely reach the ears of Augustine and Gurdanasses. But he didn't care. The Iron Nation had prepared for the dragon-slaying battle for a long time. Augustine was also a legendary figure who would not retreat until he achieved his goal. He would not give up the dragon-slaying mission just because the military fortress was being attacked. He would not return in a panic. Since he had prepared a lot, he would definitely slay the dragon and return victorious with the corpse of the dragon. Finally, he would arrogantly attack the city of Dawn together with the new legion sent by the Iron Nation. So William had to act quickly. He had already let Augustine leave one night earlier. If he delayed, whether it was because of the butterfly effect, Augustine would succeed in slaying the dragon or fail. Then William would lose too many benefits and opportunities. When the Dawn army was less than 5 kilometers away from the military fortress, the scouts of the Iron Nation had already discovered them. This was not something that the Elfin Rangers could stop. The main thing was that this group of people did not travel through the forest. Instead, they walked on the flat grassland at the edge of the cliff. This kind of blatant march was simply too arrogant. At that moment, the walls of the military fortress were filled with soldiers. The front line was filled with shield-bearers, while the back was filled with archers. The catapults were ready, and some heavy-duty crossbows were also moved to the walls. They had no choice. They had not built arrow towers yet. The heavy-duty crossbows could only be placed on the walls. As the Legion commander of the 13th Legion, Brant frowned. He silently cursed the intelligence department of the Iron Nation for being idiots and retarded. He had heard that the higher-ups of the Iron Nation had planted no less than thousands of spies in the City of Dawn. There were at least 20 spies who had transmission scrolls. If the City of Dawn attacked the military fortress, the spies in the city would definitely be alerted. They would not be able to hide from the spies in the Glory Legion. But they are already at our doorstep, and I have not received any news. Are you telling me that the Dawn army is going to send troops to help slay the dragon? Brant clenched his fist. He had just sent back information. Augustine would definitely not return to provide reinforcements. But the reinforcements from the Iron Nation would need at least 8 hours to arrive. This meant that he had to lead 3,000 soldiers and defend until that moment. He glanced at the tens of thousands of trembling slaves in the city. Naturally, he did not think much of them. Perhaps there were many professionals among them. But they had not gone through training and had no equipment. Their combat power was extremely low, and they could not climb up the walls. Even if they did, they would only cause trouble. They could only carry the arrows and do manual labor. Hence, he shouted with a sinister gaze, "The Legion of the City of Dawn dares to invade. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Kill." 3,000 people shouted in unison. Their voices were deafening. The Dawn army, which was tens of thousands of meters away, could hear them clearly. William looked at the military fortress, which was almost entirely made of stone and steel. It gave off a strong sense of oppression. It was like a huge magical beast hovering above the cliff. He gently waved his hand, and the flag was immediately raised. The 3 legions quickly got into formation. Among them, 3,000 shield-bearers stepped forward in unison. They followed the command of the flag and advanced neatly. And the short-haired William was in the lead. He was like a charging rhinoceros. His running speed gradually increased. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and the air around him whistled. His speed became faster and faster. He seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning, and he smashed into the city gate with billowing smoke and dust. Bang! A sword that shone with thunder battle energy slashed angrily at the city gate, which was made of steel. The 5-meter-tall city gate trembled. A clear crack appeared on the city gate. When Brent saw this scene, his heart that had risen to his throat swallowed back into his stomach. He laughed in disdain. How much battle energy do you have? How can you slash with your sword? William shrugged his shoulders and shook his numb hand. He silently leaned against the city gate. Then, a huge figure wearing steel armor walked out from the formation. He also ran wildly towards the city gate like William. Brent was in a daze as he rubbed his eyes. Gosh? Chapter 105. Shoot the arrows. Where are the arrows? Shoot at him. Don't let the troll get close to the city gate, Brent shouted. The archers drew their bows and released their arrows, but when the arrows hit the troll, they only grazed the armor weakly. They did not even leave a scratch on the armor. But the power of some heavy crossbow arrows was not small. A pure steel arrow that was 1 meter long and weighed 3 kilograms needed 3 people to pull the bow together to shoot the arrow accurately. There was no doubt. This was the most powerful defense weapon in version 1.0. This kind of heavy crossbow could completely torture the enemy like a candied fruit. If this thing had magic attached to it, it would be a divine weapon. 10 giant crossbow arrows were aimed at the troll, who was speeding up and going berserk. Bang, buzz, 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 the bowstrings made of magical beasts vibrated violently. 10 powerful steel arrows, with visible rotating air currents, reached the troll in the blink of an eye. But at the same time, Lautner, Alec, Eric, and the newly joined half-elf lord, fearless legion leader Christian, appeared behind the troll at the same time. They each held a super-heavy shield and blocked the troll with their bodies. Bang, 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 the 3 steel arrows that could have hit the troll sent the 3 figures flying more than 10 meters away. They even crashed into the troll, causing them to bleed. But in the end, none of the arrows hit the troll, and his charge was unstoppable. Seeing that the heavy crossbow arrows were too late, Brent could only clench his fists and stare at the bottom of the city gate. He only listened. Bang, the city gate, which had been reinforced with steel, had a huge crack that allowed a person to walk through. Then, the iron-headed baby, who was wearing a deformed epic-level helmet, fell heavily to the ground, foaming at the mouth. Everyone, attack! Take down the city wall! Lautner slowly stood up from the ground, coughing blood as he shouted. Although the specially made heavy shield was not pierced by the heavy arrows, the force was too great, causing him to suffer serious internal injuries. But now everything was worth it. The fact that such an incomparably sturdy city gate had a hole in it meant that the military fortress had been taken down. Throwing stones and heavy arrows was no longer a problem. William, who was originally below the city gate, jumped over the gate and saw a few unlucky fellows who had been seriously injured by the shattered city gate. The other dozen soldiers were still in a daze. They were also puzzled. The battle hadn't started yet, right? There were no shouts from the city walls yet. Why was the city gate broken first? Were the guys on top of the city walls eating shit? Are you kidding us? However, when they saw that William, who was alone, had already broken into the city, they immediately drew their swords and surrounded him. Trash. William clenched his fist and smashed it at the soldier who was charging at the fiercest. Before the blade landed, the soldier's head was deformed by William's punch. His feet suddenly flew forward, and then he fell heavily to the ground. Kill! Reinforcements came one after another from the city walls. William wielded the epic-level thunder longsword that he had reforged and charged forward without hesitation. He lifted his hand and slashed at the weapon of the soldier in front of him. The soldier's body and armor were also split into 2. Fresh blood spurted into the air. It was a terrifying scene. When someone attacked from the left, William turned and kicked fiercely. The enemy's battle energy shield instantly shattered, and he flew backward and crashed into the city wall. The back of his head hit the wall, and he died. Dozens of warriors surrounded William. Then, a soul shock wave suddenly exploded. Dozens of figures flew backward. It was like a goddess scattering flowers. The reinforcements behind them were knocked off their feet. Even though this attack was not fatal, many people felt dizzy. It was as if their souls had left their bodies. Seeing this scene, the other warriors from the Iron Nation all felt a sense of panic. The lord of the City of Dawn was like a violent tyrannosaurus. He dashed around without firing a single arrow. The lord of the City of Dawn was like a tyrannosaurus. He was not a proper ranger. He did not play by the rules. Brant could only watch as William slaughtered his way through the city gate. But he could not stop him. 3,000 shield-bearers had already carried the siege ladders to the city gate. What was even more shocking was that these well-armored fellows were all elves and half-elves. They could easily dodge the stones. Even if they could not dodge the heavy arrows, there would not be too many casualties. As their equipment was shining with silver light, it was as if they had been infused with mithril. As a result, even if Brant's archers used their battle energy arrows, they would not be able to severely injure their enemies. Furthermore, these fellows had shields. The heavy crossbows were not very effective. They could not even skewer a Tonghulu, elves and half-elves. How can I fight against 3 legions? Brant cursed in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy footsteps could be heard again. A troll with even more exaggerated equipment came to the city gate under the protection of the shield-bearers. He held a glowing green mace and smashed it at the city gate. In just a short while, the gap in the city gate continued to widen. Some shield-bearers frantically rushed into the city gate and fought alongside their lord. At the same time, there were also some powerful soldiers. That's right, they were soldiers. They stepped on the siege ladders and easily jumped to the top of the city wall. They started to massacre the enemies. Oh, these ferocious elves were senior captains. Their levels were not high. They were only level 40 or 50. But their bloodlines were high. They were advanced and grandmaster at that moment. Brant's heart turned cold. He did not even have the desire to attack, but the soldier beside him swallowed his saliva and pointed to the warehouse behind. My lord, burn the warehouse and retreat from the secret tunnel behind. Brant turned to look at his personal guard. He narrowed his eyes and resolutely pierced through the personal guard who had followed him for many years. He ignored the shocked and frightened gazes of the soldiers beside him. Suddenly, he roared, "The Iron Nation is unjust. They mistreat the civilians and slaves. They wantonly killed the nobles. I, Brant, will lead my subordinates and join the Lord of Dawn." At that moment, Brant jumped to the bottom of the city wall. He stretched out his hand and swept away a few soldiers who were obstructing him. He knelt on one knee in front of William. I, Brant, the 13th Legion commander of the Iron Nation, welcome Lord William into the city. His voice was very loud. He used his battle energy to cover half of the battlefield. For a moment, many soldiers were dumbfounded and stopped fighting. William held his blood-stained longsword and slowly walked in front of Brant. He tilted his head and said, "Very good. But I don't like traitors." Swish! A blue sword light slashed diagonally. The sudden appearance of the battle energy shield was instantly destroyed. Brant's eyes were filled with fear. He had a ferocious expression and wanted to retreat. But William grabbed his arm and slammed his head into it. Brant's nose was bleeding profusely. His dizzy head was thrown backward. Slash! Another ray of green light streaked past. The poisonous short sword that was enhanced with the light of dawn slashed his neck in an instant. Brant's head, along with his flesh, slowly fell to the ground. The headless corpse continuously spewed out fresh blood. Brent, who had over 10,000 HP, died in just a few short seconds after receiving this fatal throat slash attack. That's why I said that those who don't wear helmets and neck protectors are idiots. William raised his eyebrows. Then, he looked at the dumbfounded soldiers. He pointed his sword at them and said, "Point out the fellows who use the heavy-duty crossbow, and I'll spare your lives." As a soldier threw down his weapon in shock, the others also threw down their weapons. They even pointed out the tens of unlucky fellows. William waved his longsword. Swish, swish, swish. His sword energy flashed, and tens of heads fell to the ground. "I can spare your lives, but all of you have to go in mine," William shouted angrily. He officially announced that the flag of the Iron Nation's military fortress would be completely changed. D*MN, the elves have always been outnumbered. Your Iron Nation really looks down on the elves. William twitched his lips. This military fortress was just as he had imagined. It was extremely easy to take it down. In particular, he did not expect that there would be a Legion commander who surrendered. The reason why they lost so quickly was that the humans had not fought with the elves for a long time. They had long forgotten how powerful the former rulers of the continent were. Chapter 106. Active Attack. Iron Nation's Military Fortress Battle difficulty. Mission completion, 95% remarks. You have won the battle with minimal effort. Congratulations, you have successfully angered a nation. Prepare to be judged. Reward. 95,000 experience. Reward. Military Fortress Battle Instance Dungeon Crystal. William held the Instance Dungeon Crystal in his hands. He did not expect that this kind of mission would have a crystal. But then again, although the mission difficulty is A-, this kind of mission difficulty should be given to the players. To the players, an A mission is no less difficult than a small main storyline mission. The Iron Nation used a legion to guard the military fortress. If the players were of the same level, they would need at least 3 times, or even 4 or 5 times the number of players to conquer the fortress. I was able to win so easily because the mainframe has never treated me as an NPC. William smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. He kept the crystal in his space ring. With this Instance Dungeon Crystal, the players could also drop equipment. If there were no accidents, this Instance Dungeon would be more popular than the Misty Valley Instance Dungeon. Because this kind of war instance dungeon had a high drop rate of equipment, it was the instance dungeon that the players liked the most. After the players entered the instance dungeon, they would fight together with the NPCs. No matter what the difficulty of the instance dungeon was, the players would replace a portion of the NPCs and carry out some attack missions. But the players would not be able to see William killing. Perhaps after William entered the city gate, he would stand at the side and act as an NPC guiding the way. He would watch a large group of players enter the city gate and die, until the players killed Brant and the group of small monsters around him. That was the key to winning this instance dungeon. William patted his head. It was not the time to be dreaming. He invested all his experience into his character level. Swoosh. A white light flashed. William was already at level 56. He was one step closer to the upper limit of the version. At the same time, Nox suddenly ran over and said in surprise, "Lord, the troll is still alive. Iron Doll is not dead?" William was pleasantly surprised. He quickly walked to the city gate. The troll had already stood up, but his body was swaying. It was as if the whole world had been turned upside down. He could not tell the directions. After all, even his epic helmet had been deformed. William did not expect this guy's head to be so hard. He walked around him a few times and nodded. "Not bad. I didn't pay attention just now and thought that you were dead. I didn't expect you to only have a few negative buffs, but they are quite serious." Of course, Shurfong had never intended to kill Iron Doll in one go. It would be best if he could use this fellow again. Even if he had to waste an epic helmet, it would not matter. After all, in a battle like this, high-level equipment was a secondary consumable. William ordered, "Nox, get someone to bring him back. Get a priest. Oh, get a mage to make some medicine for him to treat his injuries." The muscular clerics would not be able to heal the trolls. Their holy light only worsened the trolls' injuries. "We're rich, we're rich." Lautner ran back and hurriedly said, "Let's not talk about the 60,000 slaves. The warehouse still has 600,000 kilograms of rations, 3,000 sets of excellent blue armor, 100,000 arrows, at least 200,000 kilograms of refined copper and iron, and 800,000 kilograms of various stone materials. Oh right, including the 10 heavy-duty crossbows on the city wall, we found another 10 at the warehouse entrance. I reckon that they did not have time to move them up the city wall before we rushed up. Lautner paused with lingering fear. You definitely won't expect that there are 30 catapults in the warehouse that have not been assembled. If the enemy knew that we were going to attack, they would have formed a formation of nearly 100 catapults. We would definitely have suffered a lot of casualties. William happily waved his fist. War money could really make him rich. But he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If he did not have the player's innate skill, insight, which allowed him to identify the spies and capture them all at once, the consequences would have been unimaginable. He did not even need to think to know that the catapults in this military fortress could not only be used for defense, but also to attack the city of Dawn. The Iron Nation's ambition was not small. But the most important thing was, William liked to fight this kind of war that did not cost him anything. He could not afford to suffer heavy losses. Even if he lost a legion, his losses would be far greater than the Iron Nation's losses of 3 legions. His soldiers were too precious. Oh right, how many casualties did we suffer? William personally saw many soldiers being pierced by the heavy-duty crossbows. The explosive power of the arrows was not something that could be blocked by battle energy shield. Even though the elfin warriors under his command were wearing silver armor and holding shields, they were still easily pierced by the steel arrows like candied fruit. 117 people died in battle. All of them died from the heavy-duty crossbows. 389 people suffered light injuries. No serious injuries. Lautner sighed. As long as it was a war, there would always be casualties. It was already very rare to have so few casualties. If it was not for the Iron Child. If it was not for the fact that these high-level combatants were frantically protecting the Iron Child. If it was not for William taking the lead and slashing a crack in the city gate. Anyway, if they did not have so many advantages, the casualties would have been 7 or 8 times higher. William nodded with a heavy expression. Tell the other Legion commanders to bring all the officers above the rank of team leader. Yes. Lautner nodded and immediately went to inform the others. Not long after, 3 deputy Legion commanders brought 1,500 people to William. Needless to say, these 1,500 people were the backbone of the 3 legions. Most of them had advanced bloodlines, and there were dozens of Grandmaster bloodlines. In the eyes of the players, they were all boss-level NPCs. After all, the elfin population was too small. In a situation where they did not have an advantage in terms of population, their bloodline potential was naturally very high. If not, they would not be able to destroy the human legions so easily. Moreover, there would be too many such boss-level teams in the future, regardless of whether it was a duchy, grand duchy, kingdom, or empire. They all had various types of boss-level teams. They were also known as execution teams. William's next goal was to go deep into the snowy mountains of the East Sea. He might directly face the elite legions of the Iron Nation and even the great dragon clans. Therefore, he decided to mobilize the high-level combatants for an execution mission. Of course, the rest of the troops would be used for other purposes. He looked at the Legion commanders of the Dark Knight Legion and the Moonlight Legion. Legolas and Albert, the 2 of you will lead these 1,500 people and my personal guards to the snowy mountains of the East Sea along their route. The rest of the troops will be handed over to Lautner. He will immediately lead the other 4,000 people to the South Sea port. As for Christian, you will lead the Fearless Legion to guard this military fortress and prevent the Iron Nation from taking it back. Before William finished his sentence, he called out, Eric, Alec, the 2 of you will also follow me to the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Yes, Lord. Everyone stood up in unison and patted their chests with their right hand. They lowered their heads and shouted. In that case, check your rations and water. We will set off immediately. Once William's voice fell, everyone immediately moved. Lautner led the remaining troops of the 2 legions and ran at full speed towards the South Sea port. They would board a large ship and attack along the coastline. This would be a surprise attack. If William's execution team really met with misfortune, Lautner's mission would be extremely important. Would it be too tiring to fight such continuous battles? You must be joking. Everyone had battle energy. Their physical fitness was excellent and top-notch. Legolas and Albert were Blackleaf elves and Moonlight elves respectively. Both of them had epic bloodlines, but he did not know why he felt that the name Legolas was very familiar. Could it be? Whose copyright had the production company of the gods violated this time? Chapter 107. Albert was the deputy commander of the Moonlight Legion. He was a level 53 fire element warrior, and his sub-occupation was a blacksmith. He had an epic hidden occupation, a flame warrior, and an epic bloodline. In addition, he had inherited equipment from his family. He also knew how to make equipment. His dazzling equipment was even more impressive than William's. Not only was he strong in close combat, but he was also very tanky. The deputy commander of the Night Legion, Legolas, had a hidden occupation, a Gloom Ranger. He was level 55 and had awakened a wind element attribute. His sub-occupation was a wind element mage. However, he did not like to use magic skills because he was a pure ranger. Mages were just for fun. In particular, his close combat ability was outstanding. Besides occasionally using the short sword that he carried with him to deal a fatal blow to his enemies, he preferred to use his bow and arrows to kill his enemies. Even if his enemies were very close to him, he would use his bow and arrows to destroy their head. In short, Legolas did not use his magic and close combat skills often. The Gloom Ranger was a very powerful hidden occupation. He had many tricks, such as concentrated shooting, flying arrows, storm of arrows, and so on. He could use his bow and arrows to easily face many strong close combat enemies. William's expression suddenly tightened. He seemed to remember who Legolas was. He was clearly the elfin prince from The Lord of the Rings. The production company of gods was too shameless. Now that he had an elfin prince, a dwarf prince, and an excellent lord like William, could he form a team to protect the ring? William, who was marching, suddenly raised his head and looked at the snowy mountain of the East Sea, which was 13,000 meters tall. He could not help but mutter, "It's quite interesting. But Odin is in the City of Dawn. This trip is not to destroy the ring, but to slay the dragon. Furthermore, this mountain is a dormant volcano." Legolas, who was beside him, faintly heard something. He suddenly said, "Lord, do you think that the Iron Nation is planning to slay the dragon?" William nodded solemnly. "That's right. Augustine has brought 2 elite legions from the Iron Nation and so many experts. Their target is most likely the fire dragon. Our mission this time is to disrupt their plans." Albert had a look of sudden realization. Then, he chuckled and said, "My lord, you were able to guess the enemy's target with just this little bit of information. Your foresight is far beyond what I can compare with. You can also guess, as long as you train less muscles and use your brain more." William glanced at the 2-meter-tall Albert. Even though he was an elf, he was tall and sturdy. His arms and fists were strong, and he could stand on them. In short, this guy was definitely not a normal moonlight elf, because it was difficult for him to climb a tree. Albert did not comment on William's words. He thought that the Lord wanted him to give up his profession as a blacksmith, so he pursed his lips and said, "If I can't forge iron in my life, it would be meaningless." As he spoke, Albert reached out and snatched Bloody Crusher's spiked mace. He swung it horizontally and trained his bicep. The 4-meter-tall troll's eyelids twitched when he saw the mace being flung away. He decided not to ask for his weapon back for the time being. After all, he was his master's slave, and Albert would return his weapon to him sooner or later. Eric was silent throughout the journey, as was his habit. Alec had already led his scouts to scout ahead and check for any possible ambushes. William was a legendary boss, and he was leading 4 epic bosses, a level 66 Grandmaster Troll, and 2,000 Super Elite. He was very confident that he would be able to gain enough benefits from this battle. It had been 3 days since Augustine had led the 2 legions to the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Other than a short break, they had been on the road the entire time. He had received news from the moment the military fortress discovered the enemy to the moment the military fortress was destroyed. But it was precisely because of this that he would not lead his troops back. Otherwise, he would directly face the Dawn army, which was in high spirits. By then, regardless of the outcome, the Iron Nation Legion would suffer heavy losses. Augustine did not know if the Dawn army would continue to chase after them, nor did he know how many people would chase after them. He also did not know if William knew that he had the intention to slay the dragon. But the key point was that if the Dawn army continued to travel for a few days, it would be enough to suppress their morale. When the war really started, it was uncertain who would win and who would lose. If the Dawn army did not chase after them, then he would return victorious with the corpse of the great dragon. Then, with the army of the Iron Nation, he did not believe that they would not be able to recapture the military fortress under a pincer attack. If they recaptured the military fortress, the City of Dawn, which did not dare to split its troops, would be completely destroyed. It was not an exaggeration to say that a horse would run to death from a mountain that was in sight. Augustine chose a small path that was difficult to walk on. He completely avoided the path that was easier to walk on because there were many great dragon clans living there. He tried his best to avoid those enemies. Although the great dragon clans were not necessarily loyal, and it was very likely that they would run away after a fight, he did not want to waste his troops to kill them. Slaying the dragon was the key. He would avoid the great dragon clans if he could. Especially since he had a spy. The sky gradually turned dark. Augustine continued to lead the army on their way until the second moon appeared in the night sky. Only then did he give the order for the soldiers under his command to rest on the spot. They were to eat and drink as long as they did not make any noise. At the same time, suddenly, he heard a strange voice. Augustine squinted his eyes. He abandoned his soldiers and walked into the dense forest alone. As he stretched out his hand to pluck the leaves in front of him, a figure in a black robe suddenly appeared in front of him like a ghost. Augustine was not frightened. Instead, he smiled and said, "Muckared, long time no see." The person in the black robe was the culprit of the devil's den, Muckared. He lifted his head and his green eyes flickered. "Yes, it has been 5 years. Now that you are finally here, I thought that you had given up on slaying the dragon. Speaking of which, how many years have you been relying on that fire dragon? Even with your abilities, you have no chance of sacrificing it?" Augustine knew that Muckared was definitely greedier than ordinary people thought. If he had the ability to sacrifice the dragon, why would he want to ally with them? Both parties had already decided. As long as they succeeded in slaying the dragon, Muckared would obtain the soul of the great dragon. Augustine and the rest would obtain the corpse of the great dragon. All in all, it seemed like Augustine would gain more benefit. However, the soul of the great dragon might be even more valuable to a dark warlock. The two of them got closer to each other in the dark forest. Then, they turned and walked into an even denser forest. Other than the sound of their conversation, there was only the sound of laughter. No one knew what they were talking about. Chapter 108. Augustine walked out of the dense forest and took a few deep breaths. The conversation just now had made him very uncomfortable. It was not that he liked to face a dark warlock like Muckared. It gave him an oppressive feeling. Augustine squinted his eyes and pondered. This old fellow did not mention that we need to sacrifice lives to activate the magic formation that is a fatal threat to the giant dragon. Damn Muckared. Does he want to send my soldiers to their deaths? Augustine shook his head gloomily. Although he was not a citizen of the Iron Nation, these people were his soldiers. Now that they were following him, he would not let them die for nothing. Even if it was to slay the dragon, he could not kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. It was more important to occupy the City of Dawn and the Black Lava Nation. It was more important to preserve his soldiers. He had to prioritize his priorities. Slaying the dragon could be delayed, but attacking the chaotic Black Lava Nation was an opportunity that would not come again. Then I can only lure out some giant dragon clansmen and use them as sacrifices. Augustine raised his eyebrows. He could only do this for now. He could not think of any other solutions. After all, Mukured had said that he had placed a soundproof magic formation at the entrance of the dragon cave. As long as the mountain didn't start shaking, even if they killed all the fire dragon tribe members, the pig wouldn't wake up. This also meant that Mukured had the same intention. However, they would definitely lose some soldiers. Augustine climbed up a tree and looked at the snowy mountains of the east sea not far away. He smiled. There's still one more day. William led the elite 2,000 soldiers and finally caught up with the Iron Nation. They stopped at the place where Augustine had temporarily rested the previous night. Some of the flowers and grasses on the ground were bent, and some were even uprooted. There were many scratches on the surrounding trees. Some soldiers were probably bored and had even carved some unsightly portraits on the tree branches. Of course, this was a very common situation. No one had deliberately left these marks. William followed along the way. Almost every place where they stopped to rest had many marks left behind. Augustine led 2 legions. It was impossible for every soldier to be highly trained. Furthermore, there were so many of them, so it was difficult not to leave any marks in the forest. Even Albert, who was a muscular man, would throw out a battle energy slash when he had nothing to do. The trees that were cut down were even more obvious. Of course, the key was that there were no pursuers behind William. He did not have to be so strict. Everyone knew this. Augustine doesn't seem to be guarded against me. Is he that confident? William scratched his head. He did not understand. Why didn't Augustine leave a single scout behind? Or did he leave something behind that I didn't notice? According to his memories from his previous life, not only was Augustine's combat power extraordinary, but he had also developed the Freedom Alliance after the Iron Nation had been destroyed by the Darkness Invasion. But William forgot, be it humans or NPCs, they all needed to grow. Augustine was now just a proud young man. He and Gerdonaces had known each other since they were young, and they had founded the Freedom Alliance together. It could not be said that everything had been smooth sailing, but with their combined efforts, they had taken control of the Iron Nation in just a few years. How could Augustine not be proud? Furthermore, Augustine had many epic experts under him. His army was larger than William's. What did he have to be afraid of? On top of that, there was a spy like Mukured. What did Augustine have to be afraid of? He was only 28 years old, but he had accomplished such a great feat and taken control of a nation. Why was he not confident? It had to be known. Only complete failure would cause a person to grow or fall. Augustine had not encountered a fatal setback, and he was far from the shrewdness and wisdom of his previous life. Of course, the crucial point was that Augustine had never fought with the elfin army. It could even be said that many human nations on the legendary continent had forgotten the true combat power of the elfin army. In the Second Era, the elves had ruled the gods' continent, but the Third Era belonged to the humans. The humans were the victors of the current era, and the history books were written by them. But many historians had greatly underestimated the combat power of the elves. This caused many human nations to underestimate the elves. In the end, some duchies, grand duchies, and even a few kingdoms could not come into contact with the elves. They could only understand the elves through history books. They only knew that the elves were mysterious, but they did not know how powerful they were, of course. Some powerful kingdoms and empires would definitely face history correctly. They would even remember the power of the elves. They would recognize the strengths of the threat and attack the weaknesses of the threat. They would strive to prevent the elves from leaving the forest forever. After a short rest with 2,000 elites, William cautiously continued to track Augustine's army. He believed that as long as he did not make any rash moves, he would not lose everything. If he won the War of the Giant Dragons, then in version 1.0, he would welcome the greatest fruit. It would lay a solid foundation for his rise in the future. Time passed quickly. Lautner led 4,500 people on 13 large ships. They sailed along the coastline at a much faster speed. They were about to reach the snowy mountains of the East Sea. They did not hide this trip because these ships did not dare to go deep into the sea. After all, the large ships that were built could only be used as large fishing boats. They were far from the level of warship, but an epic warship was already halfway built. The overall structure was almost complete. Now all that was left was dragon bones. Lautner finally understood why William did not use some good materials as the dragon bones. If that was the case, the epic warship would have been completed long ago. That's because his true goal is to slay the dragon. Lautner could not help but clench his fist. His blood was boiling. Slay the dragon. This was the dream of every man on the legendary continent. The title of Dragon Slayer was an honor that would accompany him for life. It was hard for him to imagine when William had such a plan. Half a year ago, he had been looking for a shipbuilder. But after he found a moonlight elven grandmaster shipbuilder, the shipyard could only build some large fishing boats. They have been building the hull of the warship, but the materials used are unimaginably expensive. Lautner was William's executive officer. He knew almost everything that William knew. Half a year ago, there were nearly 200,000 gold coins in the warehouse of the City of Dawn. But William had spent nearly 80,000 gold coins on the epic warship. Even the existing materials, such as mithril, fine copper, and fine iron, were thrown into the warship as if they were scrap metal. Also, the expensive black iron wood. According to William, the quality was not enough? Then he would make up for it with quantity. William wanted to forcefully build the warship into an epic warship. He wanted to reach the upper limit of what a grandmaster shipbuilder could build. In short, this epic warship was more expensive than half of the City of Dawn. If I add the dragon bones that belonged to the great dragon. Lautner was in a trance. He looked at the snowy mountains of the East Sea that were about to reach the shore and muttered, "If I can really do this, that warship will be invincible in this sea." Chapter 109. The next morning. The moment the sun rose from the horizon, the prelude to the dragon-slaying war had begun. At the foot of the snow mountains of the East Sea, the terrain was higher and the vegetation was sparse. It was like entering a small forest from a primeval forest. The closer one was to the snow mountains of the East Sea, the more it was so. However, more than 8,000 orcs and gnolls had been lured into the trap by Mukured. Mukured had informed them that his great master, Clystras, had awakened and had a mission for the two chiefs. At the same time, he wanted them to bring the strongest tribesmen. Logically speaking, the chiefs of the two clans would be suspicious of such a strange order. This was because when their master gave orders, he would never meet with other trash. Only the chiefs would have the opportunity to meet their master. But suspicion was just suspicion. They did not dare to refuse. If they did not obey their master's orders, they would only be facing destruction. Clystras was their master. He was the only king of this world, the only giant dragon. His Majesty made all the clans submit to him. Therefore, the warriors of the two clans all carried their personal equipment and stepped into the trap recklessly, while the two human legions suddenly attacked from all directions. After all, Mukured could not use the excuse that they could not wear their equipment, but even if they wore their equipment, they were still unprepared. They were immediately torn apart by the human armies who were ready to charge. Even though the two orc clans were fully equipped with equipment and weapons, they were facing two of the most elite legions of the Iron Nation. In a situation where their numbers were equal, they could not resist at all. Very quickly, their formation was torn apart by the Iron Nation's army. The roars, wails, and roars were deafening. This was a one-sided massacre. The news of this battle would spread throughout the snow mountains of the East Sea. When the other clans heard about it, they would naturally rush over to support them. Augustine needed sacrifices and not to destroy all the giant dragon clans. After all, these two armies were far from enough. The two clans brought their defeated soldiers back to the forest. The remaining corpses and those who were still alive were dragged away by the human armies. Augustine led his troops towards the dragon's cave halfway up the mountain. It was the entrance of the cave at an altitude of 5,000 meters. When he led his troops to the entrance of the dragon's cave, they could feel the environment of the giant dragon. It was a magma cave that was more than 100 meters in length, width, and height. As soon as they arrived at the entrance, they could feel waves of heat assaulting their faces. The dark red interior of the cave gave off an oppressive feeling. The snow mountain of the East Sea was a dormant volcano. However, this was all because of the fire dragon Cleostras. As long as he was in the cave, he could absorb the flame energy in the magma. Volcanoes could boil with magma, but when the fire magic was extracted, it could not become an active volcano. Of course, the fire dragon could also continue to grow in a deep sleep. For a dragon, closing and opening its eyes, over 10 years had passed, and he had also leveled up over 10 times. Becoming stronger was just that simple. However, this was the laziest way to become stronger. Are you sure it can't hear you? Augustine looked into the depths of the cave a few times, but he did not find the fire dragon. However, he was indeed a little afraid. After all, it was a fire dragon. Even the weakest fire dragon was difficult to kill. Muku was also worried. He said anxiously, "The fire dragon can't hear us, but my boundary can only block sound. It can't stop the spread of the smell of blood. However, I still need your soldiers to place all the corpses on the altar at the entrance. Do it quickly. I have to set up the magic array before he wakes up. Hurry! Hurry up and throw them on the altar. Throw them all over there," Augustine shouted. At the same time, there were traces of the giant dragon clan at the foot of the mountain. They did not rush up immediately. Instead, they were gathering and preparing for battle. Augustine clenched his fists. He looked at Muku and said coldly, "I will send an army to block the entrance of the cave. If your magic array is not effective, we will all die. However, before I die, I will definitely kill you. We are all in the same boat. Don't try to scare each other. I have lived for so many years. Do you think I am scared? Remember, when I activate the magic array, the fire dragon will definitely wake up. Remember, even if you have to sacrifice your entire army, you have to help me hold it back. If not, you will not be able to activate the altar. Just wait to be burned to death by the dragon's breath." Muku laughed coldly. He did not care what Augustine thought of him. He strode towards the altar, raised his magic staff with both hands, and smashed it into the center of the altar. Bam! A dense stream of black magic spread out with a loud bang. Thick black tentacles appeared from the altar. Those black tentacles were like invisible energy, absorbing the flesh and souls of the orcs and gnolls. However, the altar had just been activated. A rumbling sound came from the depths of the dragon cave. Augustine's mouth twitched. He could only shout, "Shield warriors, go forward. Archers, stay behind. The rest of you, prepare the heavy crossbows." Then, he looked at a small team that had not made a move yet. There were only over 100 people in this team. They had different equipment, but the quality was very high. They seemed to be in groups of 3 to 5, but they were wary of each other. One of them was a man in black armor. His entire body was burning with black combat energy. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, we will definitely make a move when the time comes. We want to kill this dragon as well, but we don't want to be cannon fodder. Adolf is right. We, the bounty hunters, are not here to die. We will make a move at the crucial moment. Commander of the Iron Nation, are you still afraid that we will not abide by the agreement?" A half-elf with 3 scars on his face sneered, as if he was making fun of Augustine. Augustine thought for a while and remained silent. Behind him, there was also a small team of 50 elite. They were the legendary boss team. Behind him, a legion commander secretly said something to him. Augustine stroked his chin and squinted his eyes as he smiled. My execution team will attack with you. No one will be cannon fodder. If anyone dares to sneak away, don't blame me for being merciful. As he spoke, he threw his hood to the ground. He was wearing purplish-black armor, and a slender and slightly curved dragon-slayer sword hung at his waist. When the others saw this scene and the aura that he released, they all gulped. Everyone knew that Augustine was very strong. But now they understood that he was not very strong. He was really strong. At least, he had become an advanced professional faster than them. Just as these people were arguing in the dragon's cave, no one noticed that some abnormally agile elves were climbing the steep snowy mountains. Not only did they avoid the sight of the great dragon clan, but they also reached the top of the dragon cave. There were not many. There were only 130 elves. After all, there were very few elves with such skills. Those who were chosen by William were NPCs with advanced bloodlines and above. William and the others lay on the snow and held their breath. They did not say a word. He was waiting. He did not believe that the great dragon would die so quickly. He also wanted to kill the great dragon, not just snatch the great dragon's carcass. Although there is no experience reward for killing the great dragon, I want the title of Dragon Slayer, legendary points, and the endowment. William clenched his fists. Of course, there was no need to let the other elves die in order to snatch the great dragon's carcass. It was enough for William to take the risk alone. In short, snatching the carcass was a sure win. If not, it was not a loss. Chapter 110. The awakening of the giant dragon, Karistras, occurred at the same time as the Yamashita clan's attack. The elite army of Iron Nation consisted of 1,000 shield-bearers in 3 rows. They blocked the front lines and welcomed the attacks of the orcs, gnomes, and even a few demons. However, what attracted the most attention was not the tribes or their leaders. Instead, it was the dragon speakers who had been bestowed the dragon bloodline by the giant dragon. There was 1 human and 2 half-elves. The 3 of them were not covered in dragon scales, but their eyes had turned into golden pupils that were filled with majesty and fear. When they looked at others, their eyes seemed to be burning with golden light. The commander of the 3rd Legion was Aaron, who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the dragon's cave. He was a dual-wielding warrior with epic bloodline. He watched helplessly as the army of the clans was about to charge over, but he remained unmoved. The other soldiers of the 3rd Legion did the same. As elites, they had good mental fortitude, until the tens of thousands of clans came close. Aaron shouted, "Release the arrows!" Buzz. The shield-bearers in front immediately changed their formation and made way for the heavy-duty crossbows behind them. 10 crossbows shot horizontally downwards. The 2-meter-long steel arrows whistled through the air and instantly pierced through the enemies at the front. Their bodies, which were still alive, were sent flying hundreds of meters in the air. The destructive power of 10 heavy-duty crossbows was not much. At most, it could injure 1 to 200 people. However, the gaps and lines of blood that the 10 steel arrows created in the army undoubtedly caused great pressure to the giant dragon's clans. This kind of war weapon was especially important in suppressing the morale of the enemy's army. Ignoring the heavy-duty crossbows, the thousands of arrows that were shot from the sky were also very troublesome for the clans who had battle energy shield. After all, the defensive power of their battle energy shields was only average, apart from a few special legions that had a unified army. The other legions would all have at least 3 types of soldiers, at least 3. They were shield-bearers, swordsmen, and rangers. The gods' continent did not have a pure profession like the archer. Rangers had already replaced the archer profession, and they also had decent close combat abilities. Shield-bearers were naturally meat shields. They had to be at the forefront and receive the enemy's repeated attacks until the enemy could no longer hold on. At that point, the shield-bearers would win. Swordsmen were the key killers who would quickly kill the enemies who broke through the formation. They could even take the place of the shield-bearers who died and raise their shields to ensure that the defensive formation was not broken. Of course, a swordsman would usually carry different equipment depending on the type of enemy they faced. If they were facing cavalry, their main weapon would be a spear and their secondary weapon would be a saber. The rangers were in charge of shooting arrows at the back. When they ran out of arrows, or when the commander gave the order to stop shooting, they would be free to shoot or carry their weapons to help their comrade. The shield-bearers were in front, the swordsmen were in the middle, and the rangers were at the back. As long as the legion commander commanded them well, every legion of 3,000 people would be able to display great combat power. The 3rd Legion of the Iron Nation was naturally not a problem. Their formation was extremely compact. They formed a sturdy tortoise shell at the entrance of the dragon's cave. 1,000 shield-bearers and 1,000 swordsmen formed a 3-layered defensive formation. Not only did they have the terrain advantage, but they could also attack the great dragon clans with their battle energy. For a moment, the clans who were attacking the mountain rolled down from the mountainside. They even knocked down a few unlucky ones. Fresh blood stained the rocks and melted the ice. Their battle energy left ravines on the ground and shone in mid-air. The battle energy had reached its climax in a short period of time. William did not know what the situation inside the dragon's cave was like, but the elves who were climbing above the cave could feel the tremors. It was as if the great dragon was roaring. It was as if a huge creature was about to soar into the sky, but it fell heavily to the ground. William covered his head with snow and crawled forward. He only revealed his eyes to observe the battlefield. He could not help but inhale a breath of cold air. Was the 3rd Legion of the Iron Nation that powerful? Just after he finished his first mouthful of milk, 3 tall figures wearing simple and crude armor suddenly rushed out of the clan army with heavy steps. Trolls! William narrowed his eyes. The 3 powerful trolls swung their heavy and huge wolf-tooth maces, sending the shield-bearer in front of them flying into the air and smashing him into the crowd. Some attacks and arrows hit the trolls, but these injuries were not enough. Before the 3 trolls died, they had penetrated the 2 layers of the Iron Nation's shield-bearers' defense. The surrounding area was in ruins. The Legion commander, Aaron, roared ferociously, "Fill up the gaps!" But it was too late. The clans behind the trolls were like locusts. They quickly occupied the 3 gaps. Aaron clenched his fist and suddenly waved his hand. Hundreds of swordsmen wearing silver armor stepped on the heads of the shield-bearers and charged out. In mid-air, streaks of sword energy swept out and penetrated tens of meters in front of the shield-bearers. In just a few seconds, the gaps that the clans had just occupied were instantly reoccupied. But the 3rd Legion, whose formation was unstable, faced another crisis. One after another, the leaders of the clans charged into the battle formation, knocking the shield-bearers at the very front and causing them to fall. They endured the ridiculous damage and advanced courageously. But they were not the most important ones. It was the 3 dragon speakers. Aaron wanted to support them, but he was not only the Legion commander, but also the commander. He could only watch helplessly as the 3 dragon speakers charged into the army formation like Tyrannosaurus. There were no dragon scales on the surface of their bodies because the dragon scales were hidden under their skin. It was as if they had an additional layer of armor, giving them an indestructible body. The 3 of them were surrounded by dense magical auras. They suddenly spat out. Boom! 3 10-meter-long fire snakes wreaked havoc in the 3rd Legion. The entire sky turned red. At that moment, the battle energy on the bodies of tens of unlucky warriors was extinguished, and their bodies were burned. Tens of warriors could only wail and roll on the ground. They tried to extinguish the magical flames on their bodies. Damn the dragon speakers! Aaron pulled out the longsword that was stabbed into the ground and was about to walk forward. The guard next to him hurriedly grabbed him and said in a low voice, "Sir, you can't go. You have to stabilize the morale of the troop. The deputy commander has already gone. The key is whether they can kill that fire dragon. Our goal is to prevent anyone from entering the dragon cave. As long as the fire dragon is dead, these clans will naturally retreat out of fear." Aaron suddenly grabbed the guard by the neck and held him in front of him. The guard struggled in panic. Luckily, Aaron only glanced at him and threw him to the side. Then he murmured, "I hope they can be faster. Otherwise, all my elite soldiers will really die." Aaron was a true soldier, a soldier loyal to the king, and a soldier who loved his soldiers like his own children. But in the next moment, rumble, the entrance of the dragon cave continued to collapse, as if a colossal creature was continuously slamming into the entrance. Roar! Almost half of the legion turned their heads in fear. Even Aaron did the same. However, they still saw that the fire dragon, who was covered in blood and had lost an unknown number of scales, was already rolling its enormous body towards them. Aaron barely dodged, but hundreds of warriors who could not dodge in time were all crushed into meat paste. Now, William leaped out. He descended from the sky like a thunder god. At this moment, time had come to a standstill. Many people looked up at the head that suddenly appeared, the Dragon Slayer. Chapter 111. The battle aura slash that was flickering with fatal killing power descended from the sky with the power to destroy everything. It seemed. Justice from the heavens. Almost everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the scene in disbelief. When Callistra's rolled out, hope reignited in his heart. He thought he wasn't fated to die. He had survived. This was because he had already seen his own clan. As long as he had the chance to recuperate, he would once again roar across the entire legendary continent. He would use his anger to burn the entire Iron Nation and even the human nation. However, just as it fell to the ground and was about to raise its gigantic head, a chilling murderous aura came from above. He didn't have time to dodge. He felt his head sink, and an indescribable pain filled his mind. Bang! An explosion of lightning and battle energy was produced. Countless people watched the scene with their own eyes. They saw the fire dragon's skull being blasted open by the thunderstorm, and pieces of scales flickering with electricity were sent flying, smashing countless sword-wielding people half to death. After an unknown period of time, along with a loud bang, the mighty sky overlord Corielstrass, the strong and enormous fire dragon, crashed heavily to the ground. His golden eyes that had already been extinguished proved that he had fallen. Meanwhile, the man who looked like the god of thunder stood on the dragon's head and slowly pulled out the sword that was stabbed into the dragon's head. He looked around at everyone and chuckled. "This dragon belongs to me." After William's dark gold sword of thunder was destroyed, he replaced it with an epic sword of thunder. There weren't many changes. The only difference was that his attributes and special effects had become stronger. However, it had a fourth special effect, a special effect with a name. Thunderstorm. Your next attack will produce a thunderstorm effect, causing lightning damage x5. Consumption, none. Cooldown, 10 minutes. William only had one attack against the Great Dragon, and that was the battle energy cut. However, he had superimposed the Light of Dawn on it, which was to superimpose 50% of all the battle energy on a certain skill, so that the damage would be extremely powerful. Coupled with the thunderstorm, the damage caused was simply indescribable. Headshot, thunder damage, fatal damage, and headshot damage, when all of them stacked together, he dealt 27,340 damage. However, this was the last straw that broke the dragon's back. Augustine, Muckared, and the rest of the injured dragon-slaying legion looked at the dead fire dragon in disbelief. Their hearts were burning with rage. "Lord of Dawn William, you deserve to die!" Augustine shouted. Because the real dragon slayer had appeared, and he was born in front of tens of thousands of people. It could be said, William's final attack could almost cancel out all the results of their earlier desperate battle. At this time, no one would remember who had severely injured the dragon. No one would remember that they had beaten the dragon to the brink of death. They would only remember the man who had beheaded the dragon. Kobe at his peak, such a thief. William shrugged his shoulders at them. He really wanted to tell them that in his previous life, he was a legendary casual player who had fought for bosses. He had countless bounties on his head. He jumped down from the dragon's head and waved his hand again in front of everyone's eyes. The dragon's corpse was gone. Gosh! The dragon clansmen widened their eyes, and their mouths twitched again. Augustine and Mucku Red looked at each other. It was a space treasure, and it was a large and independent space treasure. William lowered his head and touched his second ring. He had borrowed it from Moses, and he had to return it. However, he was in a dangerous situation. Aaron, whose eyes were burning with rage, led his personal guards to surround him. It could be said that he was surrounded by thousands of people, and he had nowhere to run. The dragon clansmen retreated. Even the loyal dragon speakers chose to retreat at this moment, because their master was dead. He had been beheaded by the Lord of the City of Dawn. Even his corpse was gone, and they could not obtain any benefits. Why would they fight? Wouldn't it be better to go home and beat up their children to vent their anger? The densely packed dragon clansmen quickly retreated. They did not even bring along the corpses of their clansmen. Augustine walked into the encirclement with a cold expression. His gaze was sinister as he said, "Do you really think that you can escape after slaying the dragon?" William strolled in the enemy's formation. He ignored Augustine and the powerful bounty hunters. He stood on a huge rock and surveyed his surroundings. Did you think that he would be afraid? No, William was never a coward. The corners of William's lips curled up. I should be asking if you can escape. What do you mean? Do you think that you can escape with only 2,000 pursuers? Augustine was not a fool. He already knew the number of pursuers, but because there were too few pursuers, he did not want to bother with them. William raised the sword of thunder and pointed the blade at the thousands of pursuers surrounding him. That's right. You've been surrounded by me. The nightmare warrior, whose body was burning with black battle energy, was so angry that he almost laughed. Fortunately, he was afraid that the black battle energy would explode, so he did not laugh. But he still mocked. Is this a joke? Could it be that after slaying the dragon, the Lord of the City of Dawn has become retarded? Someone joked. But before the others could continue mocking him, a soldier suddenly ran over and shouted, "We've been surrounded. There are 2,000 people climbing the mountain from the east, and there are 4,000 to 5,000 people coming from the south." At the same time, the 130 elfin experts above the cave crashed to the ground. They quickly gathered around William. Augustine fell into deep thought, Mucku Red fell into deep thought, Aaron touched his face and thought, "Thank goodness, it doesn't hurt." The others were dumbfounded. They had been surrounded. How can it be? The south is the sea. Augustine had just finished speaking when he slapped his face to wake himself up. It was not the time to think about how those people had arrived. Instead, it was the decision he had to make. Augustine looked at William, the Lord of the City of Dawn, who had been surrounded. He knew that this might be the best time in his life to kill William. But when he looked at the remaining 3,000 men, he could not help but shake his head, but in the next moment, he was not willing to give up. He roared in anger, "F***ck, kill that idiot William for me." Augustine took the lead and tore through the ground like a ray of fire. He instantly collided with William. Countless people chose to charge at this moment. They surged towards the 100 people who had been surrounded. Augustine chose to kill William at this moment. He was not willing to sacrifice himself for others. Opportunity knocks, but it won't come again. Today, even if I have to sacrifice the 2 legions of Iron Nation, I want you and these experts to die here. Augustine and William had just started fighting, and wounds appeared on their bodies. Both of them had powerful equipment. They had gold equipment sets and epic weapons. But William did not want to cause too many losses. The moment they started fighting, he suddenly laughed. "If you want to kill me, why don't you perish together with me? Take my magic cannon scroll." Upon hearing this, Muckle Red disappeared in a flash. Augustine saw that the quick-witted Muckle Red had escaped so quickly, and he almost peed his pants. He immediately shouted and retreated. His companions also retreated at the same time. But the black scroll did not explode. He just turned into a wisp of black smoke and suddenly disappeared. Augustine was enraged and wanted to whip William's corpse 100 times. He felt something on his face. Augustine felt that something was wrong and turned his head. A horrifying witch was lying on his back and licking his face with a tongue full of maggots. Ah 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 ah! Tragic screams reverberated in the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Chapter 112. Ah 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 ah! Augustine screamed in pain. This handsome and powerful legendary boss was almost driven crazy. Everyone around him hid far away and looked at him with disdain. A witch with rotten flesh was crawling behind Augustine. Disgusting black maggots kept crawling out of her body. She was using her rotten tongue to lick Augustine's face. Augustine was so frightened that he unleashed his battle energy. He looked like a man on fire, but his battle energy had no effect on the witch. The witch had suppressed his strength and attribute. Although she did not cause any harm to him, it was still terrible. What the hell is this? Augustine resisted the urge to look back, but the wet and slippery feeling on his face, as if there were bugs crawling on his face, always made him inadvertently fantasize. "My lord, is it a curse?" Someone replied in fear. At this moment, a warrior ran over in a panic. "My lord, our brothers on both sides can't hold on any longer. A few hundred of them have died." They were not the only ones who realized this. The other bounty hunters did not want to continue fighting. Although the Iron Nation had collected half of the bounty, the great dragon was gone. It meant that the rest of the bounty was gone. If they continued fighting with the Dawn Army, they would not have a good ending. Even if they killed William, how many of them would survive? Wouldn't the Iron Nation be able to bully the bounty hunters? The nightmare warrior, Adolf, was the first to escape. He transformed into a bolt of black lightning and went down the mountain in the west. The bounty hunters who were lucky enough to survive also stopped negotiating with Augustine and fled with Adolf. After all, not only was the nightmare warrior powerful, but he was also very astute. Every time something went wrong, he would escape faster than anyone else. This was the main reason why he could survive until now. Because he was not greedy. When the bounty hunters escaped, the morale of the Iron Nation soldiers plummeted. After all, how would the soldiers on both sides know if the escaping fellows were comrades or bounty hunters? When Augustine saw this scene, he glared at William and waved his hand. "Retreat to the west. Yaluan, lead the troops and hold them off for 10 minutes. After Augustine gave this order, he dragged his battered body, carrying the witch on his back, and ran away in panic. He was really afraid that this curse would not be lifted, and his future days would be terrible. Alan clenched his fists. He knew that if everyone ran away together, there would only be more casualties. Only someone could be the scapegoat. He shouted, "Everyone in the 3rd Corps, hold on and protect our allies. F***CKU. Brothers of the 3rd Legion, retreat. Augustine is messing with us." An even louder voice suddenly spread throughout the battlefield. The soldiers who wanted to escape wanted to receive a new order. They watched the soldiers of the 2nd Legion leave and joined them decisively. The cries for escape grew louder. More and more people were shouting that Augustine had killed people. Aaron gradually found the source of the voice. It was the Lord of Dawn, who was being protected by more than 100 people. Shameless bastard! Alan clenched his fist and cursed in his heart. But there was no turning back now. He could only retreat as well. As for the military punishment, he would think about it if he could survive. When the Iron Nation legions retreated, they avoided William, who was in the middle of the battlefield. Coincidentally, William did not give the order to attack. Some of the slower ones were about to pass by a group of elves. The Lord of the City of Dawn suddenly walked out from the crowd of experts. He hooked his finger at the tens of unlucky ones and said, "Why are you running? Where do you think you can run to?" A senior captain gradually stopped. When he saw the cold gazes of the crowd, he frowned and said, "Oh, sh*t." Fortunately, he was also a hoodlum. He threw his weapon away and lay on the ground, not moving. He was tired. The tens of soldiers under him also stopped running. They threw their weapons on the ground and took off their equipment. They were only wearing undergarments. They trembled and huddled together, rubbing against each other to generate heat. They had no choice. If they ran too slowly, they would not be able to find a suitable escape route. They would either die or surrender. When the two strong reinforcements arrived at the entrance of the dragon's lair, Lautner heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that William was safe. "It's good that you're safe. Are we still going to pursue the defeated soldiers?" "Of course, we'll pursue them for an hour. No matter how many we kill or capture, we'll retreat by sea." Under William's command, other than his personal guards and the 130 elite soldiers, a total of more than 5,000 people attacked. Should not pursue a cornered enemy? The prerequisite was that they were afraid of an ambush. The Iron Nation legions did not have any ambushes. Regardless of whether they captured or killed, they would not suffer any losses. "It's a pity that we did not manage to kill Augustine and Muckured." William was also very surprised. He did not expect Muckured to appear here. It was a pity that he did not manage to kill this troublemaking dark warlock. But now is not the time to pursue them. Guard the entrance of the lair. Prevent the great dragon clansmen from taking advantage of the chaos. After William finished speaking, he immediately rushed into the dragon's lair. He wanted to plunder the great dragon's treasures. Because he did not believe that Augustine had the time to plunder the dragon's lair. But he could not waste too much time. The great dragon clansmen had retreated because they were afraid of the great dragon. When they regained their senses, they would naturally come back to plunder the dragon's lair. William was very fast. He sprinted in the dragon's lair without stopping. The temperature in the air was also rising. Without the great dragon's suppression, the lava in the volcano started to boil. It was as if he was walking in a sea of fire. But he was very fast. It was as if he had foresight. He could easily avoid the eruption of lava and even places that might contain lava. When he reached a wide lava river, he stopped for a while. Then, he leaped up and landed on a protruding black rock in the lava river. He did not stop for long. He leaped up again. The lava covered the rock under his feet, and he landed on another rock. Green smoke was emitting from William's feet. He jumped agilely from rock to rock until he crossed the lava river. At this moment, there were no more obstacles in front of him. William had arrived at the location of the fire dragon's treasure. "I drowned in the lava countless times in my previous life." William pouted. In his previous life, he had encountered the instance dungeon of the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Other than the legendary instance dungeon, where there was a 1 in 1,000 chance of obtaining dragon's blood, most of the instance dungeons of the snowy mountains of the East Sea could only obtain dragon scales. Of course, dragon scales had different qualities. The more difficult the instance dungeon, the higher the quality of the dragon scales. This was also the reason why he wanted to challenge the great dragon's instance dungeon. He wanted to forge equipment, but since this place had become an instance dungeon, it meant that the fire dragon had been killed. Even if the players challenged the instance dungeon countless times, they would not obtain many reward. Even the great dragon's treasure was just some treasure chests. Perhaps there would be some high-quality gems, equipment, gold coins, and so on. But when William turned a corner, When he saw the small mountain of gold coins, treasure chests, and gems, he could not help but widen his eyes. Gosh! Chapter 113. The way William looked at money was no different from how a woman looked at cosmetic. He dived into the pile of gold coins and threw handfuls of them into his spatial ring. I knew that slaying a dragon would make me rich, but I didn't expect it to be this easy. William's eyes gradually turned golden. In his previous life, it was not that players could not slay dragons, but only the top clubs and a group of professional players could have the slightest chance of slaying a dragon. Otherwise, it would be impossible for players to defeat a dragon of the same tier and level in a one-on-one fight. However, even if a top-tier guild mobilized all of its members, the chances of successfully slaying a dragon were still very low. The margin for error was also frighteningly low. Slaying a dragon was no easier than playing in a professional competition. It could be said, ganging up on a legendary NPC like William was 100 times easier than slaying a dragon. Most importantly, players' attributes weren't that overpowered. Aside from a few explosive skills, it was very difficult to break through their defense. Fortunately, William's looting speed was not slow. Anything that could be touched by magic and battle energy could be stuffed into the space ring. In just 5 minutes, nothing was left of the so-called giant dragon's treasure, not even a copper coin was left behind. After all, being diligent and thrifty was a traditional virtue of the Chinese people. Wastage was a must. After that, William walked around the place. When he saw that there were no other treasures left, he chose to leave. On the way back, it was just as easy. When William arrived at the entrance of the dragon cave, he did not discover that the great dragon clansman had returned. He did not want to wait any longer. He was afraid that an accident might occur, so he led the group and ran towards the coastline. When they saw more than a dozen large ships docked in the sea, William heaved a sigh of relief. It was only now that he had the time to check what he had gained from slaying the dragons and the treasures. Prompt: you have dealt 27,340 damage to Caristras. You have successfully killed Caristras. Hint: you have dealt 9% damage to Cleostras. You have received 78,300 experience points. Prompt: you have successfully killed the level 69 legendary fire dragon. Prompt: you have obtained the beginner dragon slayer title. Prompt: you have obtained 1 legend point, Southeast Territory. Prompt: you have obtained the talent Thunder God's Fury. After William carefully observed the many rewards, he took a deep breath, held his forehead, and squatted by the sea for a long time before he recovered his senses. Beginner Dragon Slayer, title. Title requirement: deal a fatal blow to any legendary giant dragon, and let more than 100 intelligent creatures see it and acknowledge that the giant dragon was killed by you. Quality: gold, iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple, orange, strength plus 15 agility plus 15 physical strength plus 20 intelligence plus 10 charm plus 30 special effect. Your damage to any creature with dragon blood increases by 15%. Special effect: you have a certain amount of deterrence to any magical beasts below the high level, preventing them from taking the initiative to attack you. Special effect: you will be even more attractive to any dragon blood creature. Description: although you have become a dragon slayer due to your peak skill in stealing kills, you have also gained the hatred of thousands of NPCs. William ignored the complaints of the game mainframe. He was now an NPC. What did it mean that he had gained the hatred of an NPC? Did he care? No. Thus, William happily hung the Dragon Slayer title on his head. The NPCs could not see the title, but they could feel an invisible pressure. They could vaguely sense that this handsome man in front of them should be very extraordinary. If they thought about it, perhaps he was the legendary Dragon Slayer warrior? But the players can see it. After the open beta, the players will at least have their insight on me. A Golden Dragon Slayer title will definitely dazzle their eyes. Needless to say, there will definitely be many players who will kneel and lick my boots. William laughed mischievously and checked his legend level. Dragon Slayer legend level +1 restriction. This legend level has the highest effect in the southeastern region. Description: the Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf, killed a middle-level legendary fire dragon at the snowy mountains of the East Sea on December 13, 2333 in the Third Era. Description: this dragon-slaying battle was witnessed by tens of thousands of intelligent creatures, and it will be spread to the southeastern region by them. Without a doubt, I've gained a lot this time. As long as my legend level gradually spreads, I might be able to attract some powerful NPCs to join me. William stroked his chin and looked at his new endowment. Endowment: Fury of Thunder. When you face a creature that is 10 levels higher than you can sacrifice 50% of your health points to activate the Fury of Thunder. In the next 3 seconds, your next attack has a 20% chance of increasing the attack power by x 300% and causing x 300% thunder attribute damage. Strong. Is it strong? After William saw this active endowment, he gradually sank into deep thought. It was very obvious. The Fury of Thunder was a little something. It was formed by the mainframe based on the moves of Kobe at his peak. It was no different from giving him a second move that could kill someone instantly. But sacrificing 50% of his health points for such a small probability was very unfriendly to an unlucky person. It's not very useful. William sighed. He still preferred those practical things. It was best if all the data was placed in front of him. For example, he knew that if he hit the head, it would definitely cause a double critical hit. For example, if he hit the head, it would definitely cause fatal damage. It did not matter how much damage it would cause. Anyway, a lot of damage was enough. He did not like this kind of sacrificing of his life. It was almost as if he was risking his life. Of course, if there's really no other choice and I can't deal any damage to high-level monsters, if I use all my stacked moves, along with the Fury of Thunder, I'll be able to break through the monster's defense and deal considerable or even fatal damage. William stroked his chin. To him, this endowment was something that he would never use normally. Unless he faced a boss that he could not break through, then he could gamble on the probability. I really want to kill that unicorn. William was thinking about whether he could kill the little princess's unicorn. A large group of people suddenly walked out of the forest. Without a doubt, it was the Dawn Army. William glanced over. Not only did they not lose any soldiers, but they had also captured many naked captives. Get on the ship and take them away. Then throw them into the mine. Tonight, we'll hold the dragon-slaying banquet. Under William's command, the soldiers of the Dawn Army cheered. This was not only a great victory. More importantly, the Lord had become a dragon-slaying warrior. Without a doubt, the banquet in the City of Dawn would be extremely grand. At the same time, another instance dungeon crystal appeared in William's hand. Giant Dragon's Lair. Chapter 114. Hualalalala, glittering gold coins, jewels, gems, and so on. In short, anything that glowed with light fell from the space ring into the treasury. The treasury of the City of Dawn did not have many assets. Even though William had robbed the Iron Nation of many gold coins, the expansion of the army, development, and the construction of the battleship in the second half of the year had almost emptied William's treasury. Now that he had become rich after slaying the dragon, his funds were once again replenished. Lautner and Odom widened their eyes as they watched William continuously pour out gold coins, forming a small mountain of gold. Odom licked his lips and sighed. At least 130,000 to 40,000 gold coins. This does not include the value of the rare gems and metals. Lautner nodded in a relaxed manner. No matter what, there are almost 180,000 gold coins in the treasury. It's enough for us to develop for a while. That's right. In the future, we have to establish good relations with the winged people and half-elves. At the same time, we have to interact more with the new Blue Moon town. We have to increase the number of merchant teams and transactions. After William gave his orders, they nodded and walked out of the treasury. The previous evening, William had led his army back to his hometown. His subordinates had told him about the dragon slaying. Hundreds of thousands of civilians in the city of Dawn were in an uproar. Besides the official banquet, the other civilians also took out delicious food and wine and placed them on the street. The entire banquet lasted until the next morning. When William went to the treasury in the morning, regardless of whether they were humans, elves, half-elves, or dwarves, they looked at William with completely different gazes. Originally, many people only had respect, fear, or curiosity for William. But at this moment, most people's view of the Lord had changed from respect to worship. Some fanatical fans even became William's believers. For example, Alec, after all, most of the civilians were uncultured and had no knowledge. Their purpose in life was nothing more than to eat and carry on their family line. As the Lord of the City of Dawn, William had been brainwashing the civilians every few days. Now, he had also accomplished the feat of slaying the dragon. The hearts of the people were hopeful. William glanced at the character panel. Countdown to the start of version 1.0 Open Beta. 12 days, 13 hours, 22 minutes. The open beta is approaching. The player's equipment is also a problem. William raised his eyebrows and asked Odom to look for him. "Sir, what's wrong?" Odom, the dwarf prince of the Lonely Mountain, was now the chief butler of the City of Dawn. He was in charge of all kinds of logistics, it could be said. It was a waste of William's talent, however. They still did not have enough manpower. William nodded at him and said, "Inform all the blacksmiths to forge 30,000 sets of normal armor and 20,000 sets of superior armor and weapons." Odom's eyes lit up. "Big business. You should know about those chosen ones who disappeared, right? The way they disappear is indeed untraceable. Many people disappear into thin air in the city, and I can't even find them. If I hadn't designed and built this city myself, I would have thought that there was a hole in the ground that I didn't know about." Odom didn't understand why the Lord called them the Chosen One. William waved his hand and let the blonde, wavy Odom come closer to talk. William whispered something into Odom's ear. Odom's expression kept changing, from disbelief to shock, and then to disbelief. After a while, the blonde swallowed his saliva and said in a deep voice, "Is what my lord said true? I had a dream half a year ago. Didn't I meet those chosen ones who can't die? It's up to you whether you believe it or not. After 10 days, if the chosen ones really arrive, it proves that what I said is true. And I believe that the will of heaven will be conveyed to everyone's mind. What are the chosen ones? Where did they come from?" Odom didn't understand. Although the chosen ones had various races, they were very different from him. William smiled mysteriously and patted his shoulder. "I don't know. But you just have to remember that the chosen ones won't affect the overall situation in a short period of time. If you want to control your own destiny, you can only rely on yourself. But the chosen ones won't die. You just have to make good use of them." "My lord, I understand." Odom left the conference hall with a serious expression. When he walked to the blacksmith's, his heart was heavy. But he was filled with emotions. If this was true, then wasn't the Lord the messenger of heaven? Otherwise, how could he know so many secrets in advance? For a moment, Odom hurriedly covered his mouth. It was good that he only knew about this. In the future, he would not tell anyone. After a beautiful fantasy, the affinity increased to 980 plus. It was only 20 points away from the maximum value. Roar, roar, the giant wild bear roared in the depths of the forest. In an instant, flocks of birds flew away, and wild beasts scurried in all directions. William rode on Big Bear and ran all the way south in the forest. Some commoners who were pulling carriages saw this scene and hurriedly gave way to the Lord in the middle of the road. Then, they watched the dragon slayer leave in admiration. A human youth who was less than 16 years old looked at the majestic Lord and shook his head. "I really want to kiss the Lord's shoes. An older middle-aged man retracted his gaze from William and kicked the youth's butt. He said disdainfully, "Pft, you brat! Are you worthy? You still want to kiss the dragon slayer's shoes? Go and catch some fish. Go home and tie the net for me." The youth laughed and stood up. Then, he said, "Father, I'm going to be 16 soon. I want to become a professional. I want to be loyal to the Lord. Or I can go to the sea to fish. I really don't want to catch prawns and frogs in the Rainbow Lake." The middle-aged father frowned. He looked at his determined son and sighed. "Then, let's see if you have the talent. The Lord has helped us earn a lot of money. If you really have the talent, we will strive to let you learn high-level secret manuals." "Thank you, Father. I must become a real warrior." This was the wish of many youths in the City of Dawn. They wanted to become professionals. Even if they could not be recruited into the army, there was a certain chance that they would be chosen as mercenaries. Or, even worse, they could go to the sea to fish. Because the fishermen on the sea often needed the strength of professionals. Especially since William had described the sea so well, many people were tempted. The 1-year-old giant wild bear was already a level 31 beginner magical beast. When it stood up, it was nearly 2.5 meters tall. Its running speed was not slow, and it was full of explosive power. It was just a little lazy. Fortunately, Big Bear, 2 Bear, and 3 Bear did not listen to other people's instructions. But when faced with William's orders, they always completed them without any hesitation. It was not just because of the pet affinity. Moreover, because William now had the title of Dragon Slayer, the 3 big bears did not dare to have any thoughts of rebelling. They galloped all the way. After a full 2 hours, William finally arrived at the southernmost part of the continent. He also saw the endless magical sea. At the same time, William rode Big Bear and went straight to the huge shipyard. Chapter 115. If one had never been to the shipyard and dock of the City of Dawn, it would be hard to imagine how tall and big the super shipyard, which occupied an area of more than 10 football fields, was. It was even more unbelievable. Why would the City of Dawn build such a huge shipyard? There were 2,000 soldiers stationed here. They did not belong to any legion. Their duty was to protect the shipyard. Of course, these 2,000 soldiers also had to take care of the dock 3 kilometers away. If anything happened, the Taurens and the garrison at Rainbow Lake could immediately come to help. There were no golden beaches in the south of the City of Dawn. There were only hard reefs that were much higher than the sea level. Due to the geographical location, the sea was usually calm. Storms were rare. However, it was subtropical and at the edge of the coastline. Rain was inevitable. After William passed through the city gate and entered the wall, the sky above his head had already darkened. He saw that the rain was about to fall. He patted Big Bear's butt and let it follow the guards to shelter from the rain. Then, he walked into the largest shipyard in the shipyard. Once he walked in, William could not help but raise his head to look at his super warship, the Dawn vessel. That was right. The 3-masted battleship in front of him had 3 decks. It was black and glowed with silver light. It was his super warship. It was 121 meters long and 32 meters wide. It could carry a legion for short trips and could accommodate 1,200 people for long trips. The deck and hull were mostly made of gold-quality black ironwood mixed with mithril. The entire hull was almost entirely black and glowed with silver light. Other than sailing without sails, the second power source was 99 magical crystals. The estimated speed was between 180 to 260 nautical miles per hour. There were 108 cannons on both sides of the hull. After all, this world had gunpowder and the profession of cannon gunner. Magic cannons were too high-end. Other than the powerful human empires and a few elven kingdoms, no one else had them. But because the gnomes and dwarves had developed cannons, they supplemented the offensive and defensive capabilities of the grand duchies and kingdoms. They were considered strategic weapons in the middle stages of the game. The saltpeter mine was also listed as a national resource. Basically, there was no possibility of it being circulated. Fortunately, it is only version 1.0. Fortunately, it is only a beginner's village. If the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation had cannons, the City of Dawn would have no chance to develop. William sighed. The City of Dawn was not defenseless against cannons, but that required a stronger city wall. How could William have the mages to enchant the entire city wall? Was he going to befriend Moses? How could that be? This big shot definitely wouldn't do anything, and he didn't want to sell his body either. Fortunately, the area south of the City of Dawn was a super or vein on the legendary continent. The saltpeter or vein was not a problem. It was a pity that the dwarves that Odin had brought along did not have the inheritance of manufacturing cannons and gunpowder. Even if they had long been lost. Therefore, these 108 muzzles could only be used as arrow holes. But he had no choice. Until now, William had not found a cannon gunner. After all, it was a hidden occupation. It was rare, but it was really powerful. At this moment, it was a middle-aged elf wearing a silver-gray magic robe. William raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Andrew, it looks like the Dawn vessel is about to be completed?" "Greetings, Lord." Andrew was the royal shipbuilder of the Moonlight Elves. He was a grandmaster who could build epic battleship. Strategic items like battleships were different from equipment. They were not divided into levels. Epic battleships were epic battleship. Even in the human empires they were treasures. Otherwise, William would not have spent so much money. All the resources added together would be hundreds of thousands of gold coins. He could even build half a set of middle-level legendary equipment. It could even be said that it was not easy for the human empires to build such battleships. This was because shipbuilders and materials were a problem. Most importantly, the human countries in the legendary continent did not invest much in the maritime industry. Andrew was a level 56 wood magician. His secondary profession was far more important than his main profession, and his main profession was mostly used to support his secondary profession. Otherwise, Andrew, who was already over 100 years old, wouldn't be so low in level. "My lord, it's not as simple as you say." Andrew sighed. "You asked us to build the whole frame with all our might. We used whatever was best. Therefore we chose the most suitable black iron tree in the blackleaf forest. After we bought the precious black iron tree, we continuously enchanted it with magic, processed it, and exploded it. Finally, we fused so much mithril, enchanted it again, and assembled it, but the frame of this ship is too strong. It has far exceeded my control. Now, ordinary dragon bones cannot withstand it." "Dragon bones?" William smiled mysteriously. It seemed that Andrew and the rest did not know that he had killed a dragon. Therefore, he asked the shipyard workers to step aside. Andrew and the other shipbuilders retreated to the sides. Then, he waved his hand. The 10-meter-long corpse of a fire dragon filled everyone's eyes. "Dragon! Oh my God, giant dragon! Is this a giant dragon? Where did the dragon come from? Is it dead?" Andrew ignored the shouts of the others. He walked to the side of the fire dragon's corpse in disbelief. He touched the broken dragon's scales, fiddled with the fire dragon's eyelids, and even its mouth and teeth. Then, Andrew swallowed his saliva. His two pointy ears were a little soft. He was dumbfounded. "My lord, you killed a dragon?" "Fortunately, I accidentally killed the fire dragon in the snow mountain of the East Sea." William shrugged nonchalantly. Once he said this, the entire shipyard was in a mess. All the shipbuilders knelt on one knee and congratulated their lord for becoming a dragon slayer with admiration in their eyes. Andrew was in a daze for a while. He wanted to kneel on one knee, but William helped him up. "Captain, it's 121 meters long. This fire dragon is still too small. Do you have a way to fuse all the dragon bones together and add some rare materials to make it the warship's keel?" "Yes, definitely, but I need more mithril." Andrew's eyes were red. He wanted to swallow the fire dragon in one breath. His eyes were dazed, as if he was thinking about something. But he continued to say, "If my lord does not want this pair of wings, I can still make it the sails of the ship. Do you want the dragon scales, the dragon blood, the dragon crystal? Ahem, other than the keel, I want everything." William hurriedly stopped him from daydreaming. Andrew came back to his senses and understood. William must have kept the dragon blood and the dragon crystal. He was indeed a little too greedy. William expressed his respect for Andrew's research spirit. The Dawn vessel was very important, but the other things of this dragon were also very important. He could only shrug his shoulders. "I can only give you the keel. What you need to do is to take out all the keel. But the dragon wings are too thick. How are you going to make the sails?" "It's too thick. There's also a thick layer of scales. It must be very heavy." "But my lord, have you ever thought that the dragon wings are still the wings of a giant dragon? They are magic materials. When a giant dragon flaps its wings, it doesn't just rely on the power of the dragon wings. Instead, the dragon wings themselves make use of the wind, allowing the giant dragon to fly easily. So when the dragon wings come into contact with the wind elements, they will become extremely light. So, as long as I stretch the dragon wings from thin to long, and then enchant them and so on, I can turn them into super high-quality sails. Their defensive power will also be extremely strong, far from what other sails can compare to." Andrew looked at the giant dragon's corpse and couldn't help but touch it. It was just like a child who had found a new toy. He couldn't let go of it. William suddenly smiled. "Then what are you waiting for? The bones and wings of this dragon are all yours. Just leave the rest to me." "Really? Andrew, I believe in you." William patted his shoulder very solemnly. For a moment, Andrew's eyes flashed. It was as if he had seen a new life. It was as if he had discovered his mission. So he threw the magic robe to the side, held his dagger, and shouted, "Let's get to work. Everyone, help me. I will personally dismember this fire dragon's corpse. Whoever dares to steal a piece of the fire dragon's flesh, I promise to sink him to the bottom of the sea." Chapter 116. The keel of the Dawn vessel was made from real keel bones, even if the fire dragon was still young and had some flaws, but the pitiful fire dragon had successfully sacrificed itself. This meant that the potential of the Dawn vessel was limitless. At least among the epic warships, it could be considered one of the best. Although it could be considered epic in other aspects, its offensive capabilities were very low. Unless they could install some magic cannons, even cannons would be fine. As for whether the Dawn vessel could become a legendary warship, William was looking forward to it. In the end, Andrew could only helplessly say that it was impossible. The requirements for a legendary warship were too high. It was not something that the City of Dawn could support. Fortunately, William did not have to obtain a legendary warship. The current epic warships were sufficient. At least it's enough to head to that small island in the south. William hid from the rain and squinted his eyes as he looked at the endless sea in the south. The wind blew and the waves surged. The surface area of the gods' continent was too large. The combined surface area of the 9 continents was not even 1/10 of the surface area of the sea. There were millions of small islands, sea creatures, sea magical beasts. In the underwater palace, mermaids, sirens, sea dragons, and the advanced version of the small merman. In short, the sea was boundless, and the resources were abundant. This was the reason why William wanted to develop the maritime industry. A real man should conquer the sea. William sat cross-legged and trained his battle energy. Then, he waited for the giant dragon to be skinned. After all, he had to bring these things back. He had to return the extra-large space ring to Moses. It's not difficult to return what I borrowed, especially when the person who borrowed is an enchanter. I don't dare to be a debtor, William silently complained. Then, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. It was a little difficult for him to skin the 17-meter fire dragon alone. Andrew was not stupid. He used a magic scroll to send a message and found many experienced hunters to help. But even so, William sat at the shipyard for 2 whole days. When all the dragon bones were removed, he brought the almost complete fire dragon back to the City of Dawn. He placed it in the magic formation and walked to the fortune-telling hut. Pom, pom, pom. Come in, the door is open. As usual, Moses was too lazy to open the door. William pushed the door open and adjusted to the darkness in the room. He raised his eyebrows. Moses was still stroking the cat. Oh, if it isn't Sir Lord. Please take a seat. TSK, TSK. Congratulations on becoming a dragon slayer, Sir Lord. It wasn't easy, it wasn't easy. Moses chuckled and boasted for a while. Then, he looked at his fingers. This space ring is quite useful. William took off the ring and touched it reluctantly. A spatial ring with a volume of 10,000 cubic meters. In his previous life, this was a top-notch spatial ring. You like it? Moses was surprised. Yes, yes, yes. William saw his expression and quickly nodded, just like the little squirrel. Oh, but this is my... Lance held out his hand innocently. William rolled his eyes and helplessly placed the ring on his hand. In the end, he was horrified to find that his palm was being scratched. Gulp. The sound of saliva. The handsome and charming prince who could conquer all the women in the city felt that something was wrong. But after Moses retracted his hand, he nimbly scratched his palm. It seemed that he had not done it on purpose. Moses nonchalantly said, "If you want to use it, I'll lend it to you in the future. But Sir Lord, what about the borrowing fee? What do you want? Just tell me." William waved his hand. He was very rich now. Dragon crystal. William's eyes widened. He could not help but point at Moses. That's too much. Even if you want half of the dragon scales, I can give them to you. But you want the dragon crystal. Are you joking? How could William bear to give away the legendary dragon crystal of the fire dragon? Moses did not care much about William's shouting. He nonchalantly shrugged. What can you do with the dragon crystal? Are you giving it to your 3 cubs? Aren't you afraid that the attributes are wrong? Aren't you afraid that it will explode? You can feed it to the dragon, but do you have it? Do you want to make equipment? Do you want to rely on your 2 ugly subordinates? Or do you want to keep it as a family heirloom or eat it yourself? Faced with this question, William had nothing to say. That was right. He did not have any means to use the dragon crystal. But he still did not want to give it to Moses because the dragon crystal was very precious. It was priceless in the entire God's continent. Even if it was the dragon crystal of a middle-level fire dragon. If it was fed to a fire-type magical beast, it could increase its bloodline potential, level up, and all attribute. It could be used to create equipment and magic weapons. In short, there were many uses for it, but he had no way to use it now. William thought of this and made up his mind. Without hesitation, he took out the dragon crystal from his small space ring. Once the crimson dragon crystal appeared, the temperature in the room increased significantly. The surrounding magic became denser and gathered towards the dragon crystal in his hand. His hand was covered with a layer of battle energy to prevent being scalded by the dragon crystal. But the dark fortune-telling hut had been dyed red by the dragon crystal. The dazzling light attracted everyone's attention. It had to be said that a treasure like the dragon crystal was very tempting. William took a deep breath and decisively threw the dragon crystal to the shocked Moses. After all, Moses did not expect William to be so straightforward, because this was a dragon crystal. Even he did not have a dragon crystal. In the legendary continent, it was a treasure that could turn brothers against each other. Moses smiled and kept the dragon crystal in a small box. Then, he put it into his space ring. Thank you. If you want to use the space ring in the future, just tell me. William sighed and sat down on the chair. He said bluntly, Then do me a favor. You want to bathe in dragon's blood? Moses asked. Yes, and it's a large-scale one. I need your magic array. William narrowed his eyes and nodded. No matter what, even in the southeastern region, Moses was the best choice, not to mention the City of Dawn. It's simple. I guarantee that all the people you choose will become dragon followers and even dragon speakers. Moses nodded confidently. But when William saw him boasting, he did not believe it. I remember that this thing depends on physical fitness and willpower. A mage's magic array is important, but it's not that crucial. Moreover, only a giant dragon can become a dragon speaker, right? Moses glanced at him in disdain. That's a magic array without a dragon crystal. With a dragon crystal as the array, do you think the chances of a dragon follower dying is very high? Moreover, who am I? All right. Also, give me 10 one-year magic scrolls and 300 10-day magic scrolls. William narrowed his eyes. Moses raised his eyebrows. He felt that William was up to no good. But on account of the dragon crystal, he nodded and asked William to leave quickly. He had to go into seclusion and pet the cat. To train, William walked out and closed the door. He was not a dragon follower in his previous life. He did not know that there was such a trick with the dragon crystal. Is it possible? If I did not decisively give him the dragon crystal, even if Moses agreed to help me, he would not have told me that the dragon crystal can increase the success rate of a dragon follower. William clenched his fist. He had to have a good relationship with Moses. As for the magic scrolls, they are godly tricks that can determine victory or defeat in the future. Chapter 117. The news that William wanted to mass-produce Dragon's Blood warriors spread throughout the City of Dawn within a day. This good news caused a huge commotion among the human and half-elf legions. Most of the elfin legions were excited about this news, but they did not sign up for it. After all, the elves valued their appearance more than their combat power. It was simple. Whether one was strong or not was a matter of the version. Whether one was handsome or not was a matter of life. But the elves only believed that handsome was the most important. The dragon scales of the dragon speakers and dragon followers could be hidden under their skin. Only when the dragon's blood was activated would the dragon scales emerge. But if the dragon followers were unlucky, they could easily grow dragon scales all over their bodies, making them look like monsters. Although William had promised to let every dragon follower have dragon scales, he did not tell them that Moses was an all-round enchanter. This caused most of the elves to be uninterested in becoming dragon followers. William could not be bothered with the elves who valued their appearance too much. He chose young warriors who had 900+ loyalty points. They had low bloodlines but dared to risk their lives. There were 200 humans and 100 half-elves. There was a key point. They had to have fire attribute. Only then could they digest the dragon's blood to its fullest potential. Why did William not choose those with stronger bloodlines? The key point was that the dragon's blood had a limited effect on humans with high bloodline potential. It was far better to choose NPCs with lower bloodline potential. As long as they succeeded, they could at least advance to advanced, grandmaster, and epic levels. This was why the dragon's blood was so expensive. Moreover, regardless of whether it was the dragon followers or the dragon speakers, when they were in their transformed state, their combat power would increase greatly. They could fight against opponents of a higher level. The 3 dragon speakers at the snow mountain of the East Sea had not transformed, but they had already displayed their powerful combat power. If not for the sudden appearance of the fire dragon, William would have killed it with his sword. Then they would have seen the true power of the dragon speakers. But where there were strengths, there were weaknesses. After transforming, there would be a period of weakness. At that time, their combat power would be greatly reduced. If the battle was not over, they would be in great danger. Let's not talk about the dragon's blood. The military fortress built by the Iron Nation had completely become the military base of the City of Dawn. The Iron Nation issued a statement of protest. They wanted the City of Dawn to return the military fortress quickly. Otherwise, they would deploy their legions to take it back by force. The City of Dawn protested. They said that Iron Nation had built a military fortress without the approval of the City of Dawn. Iron Nation had no choice but to occupy the military fortress. In short, the two sides could not fight for the time being. After the dragon-slaying battle, the Iron Nation had not only lost his wife, but even his daughter had been ruined by William. In addition, their enemy, the Black Lava Nation, was eyeing them covetously. How would they dare to invade the City of Dawn? William's deployment of the military fortress was also very simple. He named the military fortress Light Fortress and ordered Christian to lead the Fearless Legion to temporarily guard the military fortress. The legion would be replaced every month. The 60,000 slaves who had exploded during the construction were freed by William. Most of them were sent back to the City of Dawn. At the same time, William recruited soldiers again. He planned to build a new human legion. The instructors were none other than William's 500 elfin guards. All the legions in the second half of the year were trained by William's guards. This time, he also dispatched 100 of his personal guards to the Light Fortress to train the 3,000 new recruits that he had selected. In general, some of the legions in the duchies, kingdoms, and empires of the gods had good military training. Other than a few rare occasions, they had the ability to fight to the death. But compared to the elves, they were often far behind. Why was this so? It was because of the quality of the secret manuals that the warriors practiced, the quality of the armor they wore, the quality of the weapons they used, and even the excellence of the legion commander. As long as these qualities were up to standard, when the legion started fighting, the soldiers would charge forward like a swarm of bees. They would use their various advantages to defeat their enemies. Under such circumstances, if they had good military training, they would be able to unleash more destructive power. But no matter how one compared it to the elves, the military training of the human legions was often much worse than that of the elves. If the elves trained the human legions, they could completely impart the elven legion training methods to the human legions. In addition, the instructors were William's personal guards. It was a good opportunity to publicize William's greatness, glory, justice, and other outstanding qualities. Recently, Odom had used the atmosphere of the dragon-slaying battle to announce the excellent policy of learn from the Lord and be a hero. Not only would the commoners learn the outstanding qualities of the Lord, but they would also learn his noble character. They would not bow down to the strong, and would not bully the weak. Odom. Good job. William was very satisfied with Odom's way of sucking up to him. It felt good. The dragon follower ceremony was held in a central plaza with a small bridge and flowing water. It was filled with fountains and flowers. 300 selected warriors wore small underwear and stood in a neat formation. They looked ahead solemnly. This kind of dragon followers ceremony attracted half of the city's civilians. The streets, the houses, and even the roofs were filled with onlookers. It was almost as if there was a table on the roof and a jug of wine. It was the first time that Moses appeared in front of the crowd. Many people knew him, but they only knew that he was a fortune-teller. They did not expect him to know magic. Many people were curious about him. Old Band, who was observing in the dark, was also very curious. He did not expect that William did not ask him for help. Instead, he looked for someone else. The indignant Old Band wanted to see what Moses was capable of. Hence, Zeus yawned lazily and pointed his finger forward. A complex and mysterious blue magic value appeared in the sky and pressed down on the 300 warriors. At that moment, the magic formation penetrated their bodies and imprinted itself on the ground. Meanwhile, Moses gently waved his hand, and the 6 magic oak barrels filled with dragon blood were opened. The crimson blood instantly gathered together and soared into the sky like a huge blood dragon. When they saw this scene, the commoners of the City of Dawn were dumbfounded. The huge blood dragon was like a fire dragon. It was more than 10 meters long and had a wingspan of more than 20 meters. It was filled with the majesty of a fire dragon, and it gave people a huge pressure. Moses took out the dragon crystal and threw it into the mouth of the huge blood dragon. Everyone heard a deafening roar. The blood-red dragon opened its golden eyes and slowly lowered its head. Then, it pounced on the 300 soldiers. At that moment, the huge dragon disappeared into thin air. Only 300 blood-soaked soldiers were left when the Space Archmage Old Band saw this scene. He gulped. He decisively turned around and teleported to the new district. He reported to Annie that William had befriended an enchanter. Chapter 118. Moses used the dragon crystal to perform the dragon follower ritual. It would definitely reduce the pain and torture. In comparison, it would also reduce the danger. The 300 warriors who had been selected could only feel the blood all over their bodies drilling directly into their skin. Their pores, flesh, and even their entire bodies were unable to resist the invasion of the dragon blood. More importantly, the dragon blood could greatly change the genes of a creature. As long as the genes of a normal dragon follower were not completely suppressed, they would have the appearance of a human. Other than transforming, they would not have dragon scales. They would only have a pair of golden eyes that would never be extinguished. But when the dragon blood genes exceeded the genes of the creature, they would become like monsters. Not only would their human genes be suppressed, but their battle energy and magic would also be dissolved by the dragon blood. An outstanding dragon follower should have half of the human genes and half of the dragon blood genes. Fortunately, Moses' magic formation was extraordinary. The dragon crystal floated in the air, releasing a strange red light that shone on the bodies of those warriors. The magic formation also emitted a cooling sensation. Rays of blue light flowed through their feet and into their bodies, greatly reducing their pain. The dragon follower ritual lasted for a long time. It was equivalent to transforming the warrior into a half-human, half-dragon being. It took almost an hour to complete. The 300 warriors could not stand straight anymore. Some fell to the ground, wailing, crawling, and rolling around. But there were some who had strong willpower and sat cross-legged on the ground, using their battle energy to stimulate their potential. William was delighted. There were many such people. After all, he could only check the bloodline potential and loyalty. He could not see their willpower. He could only let the Legion leader select the motivated warriors. He would select the best of the best. Even in such a situation, there were still warriors who were forcing themselves to sit cross-legged and cultivate their combat aura, using the dragon blood to stimulate their bloodline. Without a doubt, they were all good seedlings with ambition and goals. They were worth nurturing. Fortunately, they were lucky. Even though a small portion of them looked miserable. But Moses's magic array was really effective. An hour later, 300 fresh dragon blood warriors were born. None of them died. They stood up and knelt on one knee in front of William. They shouted, "Thank you, Lord William, for bestowing the dragon blood. Thank you, Lord William, for bestowing a new life. Lord William, glory is unparalleled. Lord William, glory is unparalleled. Sir Lord, your glory is unparalleled." Like a tidal wave, the roars rang out one after another. Tens of thousands of civilians saw the birth of a dragon follower, and all of them roared in excitement. Bathing in dragon blood represented glory. The dragon blood warriors themselves were glory. But these honors were all bestowed upon them by Lord William. William stood on the high platform and slowly pressed his hand down. The continuous cheers finally stopped. He used his battle energy and said in a clear voice, "Glory follows me. My glory is your glory. 9 dragon speakers and the rest are dragon followers. Good, very good." William was overjoyed. He did not expect that Moses was telling the truth. There was a chance of a dragon speaker appearing. Of the 9 dragon speakers, 3 had epic bloodlines, and the rest had grandmaster bloodlines. There were even 2 dragon followers who had epic bloodlines. There were 188 grandmaster bloodlines, and the rest had high-tier bloodlines. One sentence. There were only 300 dragon blood warriors, but they had already become a powerful force. That's great. Lautner nodded his head in ecstasy. He could not help but fantasize, when they are on the battlefield, all 300 of them can transform. No matter what kind of defensive formation the army uses, they will be able to easily tear it apart. I didn't expect Moses to have such a method. Odom was deep in thought. But he still laughed and said, "If the king of Iron Nation hears this news, will he be furious?" William nodded noncommittally. He looked at his trusted subordinates in the conference hall and smiled. The ordinary dragon blood has been used up. Only the blood essence of the heart is left. Who wants to try? The ordinary blood of a legendary intermediate fire dragon was of epic quality. As for the blood in the heart, it was all of legendary quality, which made it even more awesome and amazing. Lautner, Odom, Eric, and the rest had already known about this. But now that they were going to become dragon followers or dragon speakers, they looked at each other. Because the rumors about the dragon blood warriors were very impressive. Some legendary warriors would bathe in dragon blood, and some warriors would become very impressive after bathing in dragon blood, but they were already very arrogant and proud. Now that they had seen dragon followers and dragon speakers for themselves, they could naturally feel that the bloodline power within them was very strong. However, if they were to really compare them, they could only be mentioned in the same breath. There was no choice. Lautner and Odom felt that they were geniuses. Their bloodlines were unique, and they did not want to become the so-called dragonblood warriors. Odom had the royal bloodline of the Lonely Mountain Dwarves. Although he only had the potential of an epic level, he had not had enough nutrition in his early years. In the future, he could become a legendary warrior again. Lautner felt that he was very handsome. Eric and his son believed that after bathing in dragon blood, they would awaken their fire endowment. This would affect their intelligence, and it would be disadvantageous for assassination and hiding. The commander of the Night Legion, Legolas, raised his eyebrows. He did not care about this. If it was a wind dragon, he could consider it. They did not like it, but someone liked it. Fiu Roser, the Tauren, was the first to shout. He wanted to become the first Tauren warrior in the legendary continent. Christian rushed back from the Light Fortress. As the commander of the Fearless Legion, he was also interested in bathing in dragon blood to make himself stronger. The commander of the Glory Legion, Julio, who only had Grandmaster bloodline, also had some ideas. The commander of the Moonlight Legion, Albert, was a moonlight elf. He also had epic bloodline. In particular, his hidden class was a flame warrior. He was very interested in becoming a dragon speaker and strengthening his flames. "So, it's just the four of you?" William stroked his chin. He already had legendary bloodline. Bathing in dragon blood would not bring him any benefit. At most, he would have another transformation skill and some attribute. But there was one thing to understand. The fire dragon was of the fire element, while William was of the thunder element. Becoming a dragon speaker would give him another endowment. He would become a dual attribute professional. Dual attributes were very powerful, but it would increase the experience required to level up. After all, with dual attributes, it was inevitable that he would have to learn new skills. If he had too many skills, it would not be a good thing if they were all overlapping skills. William was not interested. He preferred to specialize in the thunder element. If there was a chance, he would rather kill a thunder element giant dragon and make himself stronger. His thunder element would become a deterrent and attack power. "All right, I'll confirm the four of you first. As for the rest of the dragon blood, we'll talk about it later." William nodded. The dragon blood could only be consumed by 10 people. Now there were only 6 people left. He had to think about how to maximize the benefits. In one sentence, the fire dragon's entire body was a treasure. He would not even let go of its anus. Chapter 119. The next day, Moses used the dragon follower's magic ritual again. He used the dragon crystal as the eye of the spell and easily turned the 4 of them into dragon speakers. Julio's bloodline broke through the upper limit and he became an epic boss. The other three weren't so lucky. Legendary bloodlines weren't that easy to obtain, so their bloodline potential didn't increase. Only their attributes and levels had increased significantly. From now on, they also had the ability to transform into humanoid monsters. In general, Julio and Albert's combat power was greatly increased because of the blood essence of the dragon's heart. One of them had low bloodline potential, and the other had fire attribute battle energy. It was not hard to imagine how powerful Albert, who already possessed fire element battle energy, would become if he were to add fire element dragon language magic. As for the other two, the only benefits they received were the ability to transform and dual attribute. The core members of the City of Dawn gradually discovered the mysteriousness and power of Moses. William did not say anything about it. He did not explain Moses' strength and origin, so people could not figure out what was going on. Moses still did not like to talk to anyone. He slowly broke the curse, stroked the cat, slept, ate, and waited for death. When the others discovered this, they did not dare to investigate. They sighed inexplicably. The Lord was indeed the Lord. He had managed to get close to a well-hidden mage. William rarely came to the underground tunnel of the City of Dawn. He did not like to come here. This was the core location of the blacksmith workshop. The blacksmith workshops on the surface were just a disguise. The dwarven blacksmiths were only novice, intermediate, and advanced. The quality of the weapons they forged was very low. The highest quality was only silver. But this underground blacksmith workshop was built along the Rainbow River. It was a place where high-quality equipment was forged. A tributary of the Rainbow River led underground. There were blacksmiths on both sides. There were many magic lamps hanging in the surroundings, so the underground world was not so dark. In one of the largest blacksmiths there were dragon scales, dragon skin, and a small amount of dragon blood hanging on the walls. The holy hammer warrior, Old Hank, was holding a hammer that shone with purple light. He was hammering a huge dragon scale. Old Hank, who had epic bloodline, had extraordinary strength. He was also a blacksmith grandmaster. But even he had to spend a lot of effort to polish this dragon scale. When Old Hank saw William walking over, he didn't even pay attention to him. His eyes glowed as he continued to move his hands, as if he was looking forward to turning it into his masterpiece. Odom saw what Old Hank was doing and smiled. The dragon scale in Old Hank's hand is the reverse scale of this fire dragon. These are the dragon scales with the strongest defensive power on Huolong's body. He's responding to your request to create a strong heart-protecting armor that can be attached to any kind of armor. William smiled and nodded. That's right. Don't keep the rest of the dragon scales. Make them into equipment sets for the dragon's blood warriors. I want them to become the unstoppable blade of the City of Dawn. Understood. However, the quality of these dragon scales is too high. Without the craftsmanship of a blacksmith master, there is no way to make any changes to the dragon scales. It will take a long time. Odom was also a blacksmith grandmaster, but he was now the deputy city lord. He was so busy every day that he didn't have the energy to wield his hammer. William nodded. He came to the vicinity of the underground river and looked at the brightly lit blacksmith rooms on both sides. Many high-level blacksmiths were waving their hammers with all their might, creating a part of a silver equipment set. When they finished a part, they would throw it to someone else to create another part. This was an assembly line forging process. It was far more time-saving and labor-saving than creating a set of silver equipment by one person. After all, the City of Dawn had 6 legions with a total of 18,000 soldiers. But now, only 9,000 middle-level soldiers had silver equipment. The beginner-level soldiers were temporarily wearing blue equipment. This could not be helped. It was not that beginner-level silver equipment could not be forged, but it was too wasteful of mithril. Even if the City of Dawn had a mithril mine, it could only provide silver equipment for middle-level soldiers. For example, the Guardian Legion, the newly established legions, and the beginner-level professionals of other legions did not have silver equipment. At most, they would be lucky if they had silver weapons, but it had to be mentioned that the soldiers of the Night Legion and Moonlight Legion did not make William sacrifice anything, because the soldiers of these two legions were all elves. Each of them had a big family business. They brought their own family's equipment to join the army. The lowest level of equipment they had was silver, and some even had gold, dark gold, and epic equipment. It could not be helped. All the elves were professionals. Almost every family had a lot of equipment and weapons that had been passed down. When they joined the army, they would often bring some weapons and equipment. This was also a tradition of the elves, but it had to be mentioned. The style of the elves' equipment was very uniform. Most of them were streamlined and engraved with the leaf patterns of the world tree. So there was not much difference in appearance, and it did not affect the overall aesthetic. William sized up the blacksmith workshop that was in full operation. Then, he went to the basic construction industry in the city for a stroll. Then, he returned home and waited patiently. He did not upgrade his equipment again. The gold equipment set was enough. With his legendary bloodline, he could add too many attributes. But the Sword of Thunder had become an epic weapon. It was commonly known as a big orange weapon. The dark gold weapon was known as a small orange weapon. The gold weapon was known as a gold weapon. Of course, there was also the heart guard that was made from the reverse scale. If there were no accidents, according to the legendary material of the reverse scale, it could become an epic or legendary special equipment. If it was installed on the armor, it could block attacks on the chest. The survival rate would also be greatly increased. The game was about to go into open beta. During this period of time, William wanted to stabilize and develop his strength. He did not want to cause any accidents. The Iron Nation sent 2 elite legions to slay the dragon. There were a total of 6,000 soldiers, but only 1,000 returned home. In addition, the military fortress had been destroyed by William. The equipment, food, and even some heavy crossbows in the warehouse had been seized. The loss was simply too great. Originally, the Iron Nation was gradually suppressing the Black Lava Nation. But not only did they not manage to get the small dragon buff, they almost got wiped out. This allowed the Black Lava Nation to regain their advantage at the border. The City of Dawn suddenly attacked the Iron Nation. Instantly, the Black Lava Nation was overjoyed. The secret trade channel between the two nations was opened again. But the slave trade was completely stopped. Even though the slaves in the warehouse had repeatedly warned them, and the great nobles behind them continued to exert their strength, it was of no use. Because the City of Dawn, the Iron Nation, and the Black Lava Nation were in a state of tripartite confrontation. At this moment, no one dared to break this situation. Everyone was waiting for an opportunity, a chance to start a war. Now, William had successfully reached level 57. He was only 13 levels away from the upper limit of the version. His attributes could be said to be insane. In addition, he had eaten dragon meat. His attributes did not increase anymore. The fire dragon meat provided him with attribute: power plus 25, agility plus 18, physical strength plus 33, intelligence plus 10. He opened the attribute panel and felt his mind shake. Not only was he becoming stronger, but he was also becoming more tanky. William Blackleaf, occupation: Guardian of Dawn race. Half-elf title: Beginner-level Dragon Slayer, bloodline potential, legendary, level 57 basic attributes plus 57%, endowment, handsome endowment, middle-level life endowment, middle-level magic endowment, power of thunder, endowment, fury of thunder or restriction, can only be used once every 24 hours, level 57 experience, 23333/163240, age 17, health 1800 plus 2500 plus 2000 plus 2600, stamina 4,780 plus 1,500 plus 400. The basic attributes were as follows: frowny face power, 434 plus 37 plus 26, plus 135, physical strength, 171 plus 37 plus 26, plus 50, agility, 442 plus 37 plus 26, plus 112, intelligence, 146 plus 24 plus 48, plus 10. Special attributes are as follows: charm, 163 plus 42, luck. 3. It's a pity that my level has increased, but my skill levels have not been maxed out. The difference in experience is too great. But I only have 14,900 health points. If I include the bonus of the legendary bloodline, I have 19,724 health points. After William finished reading the information on the panel, he felt that he was a little abnormal. He was only a few hundred health points away from reaching 20,000. He was only a 17-year-old kid. Chapter 120. William lay on the rocking chair on the balcony. He was like a salted fish. He was restless and his emotions were complicated. He had been a little out of sorts for the past 2 days. The open beta of the game was about to begin. In 1 year, a small town with only a few thousand people has developed into a huge city. It can even compete with 2 human nations, but the time to decide its fate has finally arrived. William squinted his eyes and slowly stood up. He turned his gaze to the city. The Third Era, March 1, 2333. It was the 2333rd year since the humans had dominated the continent. At the same time, the thirsty Chinese players had already created their accounts and chosen their race. It was impossible to make their faces, so they could only make their faces 20% uglier or 20% more beautiful. Other than a few exceptions, most of them made their faces more beautiful by 20%. The game was about to begin its open beta. The hundreds of thousands of Chinese players who had been waiting to enter the game felt their vision turn black. When they opened their eyes again, they had new bodies and were standing in a boundless white space. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. A cut scene of entering the game suddenly appeared. It was a promotional image of the game. The main introduction was in the southeast corner of the legendary continent. The first scene was of the dying old king of the Black Lava Nation. He was lying on the bed breathing his last breath. At this moment, the camera gave a close-up of the faces of the princes. In general, the princes seemed to be very happy that their fathers had died. The players felt a sense of conspiracy. The second scene was not of the Iron Nation in the closed beta. It was an introduction of the illegitimate son of a prostitute. It was about how he had survived, how he had found food in the rubbish, and how he had met his gay friend. The scenes changed very quickly. There was not much information left, but at the end there was a very interesting scene. It was dark and deep. It was a hellish battlefield. There was a man covered in blood. His face was corroded and his teeth were exposed. He was charging towards the devil in front of him. It was as if he wanted to fight to the death. In the next moment the scene changed. The sky was clear and there was a snowy mountain that was tens of thousands of meters tall. The giant dragon was roaring. A war between the humans and the giant dragon clan had begun. A fiery red dragon pounced out of the cave. The man who had been disfigured once again had a peerless appearance. He leaped from the 100-meter-tall hole and slashed at the dragon like a god of thunder. At this time, the cut scene was over. The players were deep in thought. They were about to enter the game, but they didn't expect 3 more oil paintings to appear. The first painting. That was the Palace of Black Lava Dukedom. One of the princes of the Black Lava Dukedom could be seen. He stepped on the corpses of others, step by step, dripping with blood. He successfully sat on the throne made of white bones and looked down on everyone. The second painting. It was the throne of steel stained with blood. The king was giving a speech in front, but behind the throne of steel sat the illegitimate son of the prostitute. He had already become a young man. When he loosened his fist, He saw that there was a thread in his hand, which had been tied tightly around the king's neck. The third painting. It was a handsome young man dressed in blood-stained armor. His long sword, which was flashing with lightning, was stabbed into the ground. His hands were on the hilt of the sword, and his eyes were looking towards the north. Behind him was the city of Dawn, which was glowing in the dark night. William's ambition seemed to have been exposed by the game mainframe of a gods. At the same time, William looked at the sky from the balcony. A countdown appeared on his personal information panel. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 ding-dong. Official open beta of Gods. Activating player forum version 1. 0 official open beta, King's War. At that moment, the entire sky was blooming with dazzling white light. Whether it was the city of Dawn or the other human nations, when they saw the white light above their heads, 5 words appeared in their minds. The arrival of the chosen ones. At this moment, countless people stood up in panic and looked at the descending white light with fear on their faces. But as the white light disappeared, the city was filled with novice players who were wearing simple clothes. The civilians were no longer afraid. Instead, they were filled with curiosity. They had never expected these cute fellows to be the chosen ones. The expressions of some nobles changed from fear to perverted. They realized that these fellows did not seem to be a threat. They should be good candidates for slaves, chosen ones? What were the chosen ones? In the eyes of some nobles who only cared about benefits, the will of the heavens was nothing. Of course, they did not attack immediately. After all, what if these pretentious chosen ones were very powerful? The sudden open beta of the game had a huge impact on the two human nations, but there were very few cases of players oppressing the players, except for some players who chose to stay in the territories of evil nobles, because the real nobles and powerful professionals were wondering what the chosen ones were. Why did the chosen ones descend? Were they fierce? In any case, he would use the policy of not caring about anything else and let the newbie players grow first. As the game opened beta, the forum instantly became lively. A girl named Cute Little Fairy decisively posted a post with a D+ screenshot. She said, "I'm so hot. Those NPCs have been staring at my chest, especially the nobles who are wearing better clothes. Their expressions are even more perverted. If not for the fact that my clothes cannot be removed by external forces, I feel that I'm going to die. Impossible. I reckon it'll be even hotter. Little girl, where are you? I'll go and protect you. In the future, let's play games together. I'll bring you along." Bad review. If you touch a female player's chest without their consent, it feels like touching a cactus. Your health points will be forcefully deducted. Same as above. Not only will your health points be forcefully deducted, but after I secretly touched it 100 times, my attributes will temporarily return to 1. The commenter above is amazing. The game has only just started, and you've already touched their chest 100 times? Fortunately, I don't care about losing health points or attribute. I only like the female player's screams. In the City of Dawn. A player sized up the City of Dawn in disbelief. The changes were like a rocket. He could not help but curse. Gosh, I'm a closed beta player. Half a year ago, the City of Dawn was not this big, right? My God, listen to what the NPCs are saying. The Lord of Dawn has become a dragon slayer? Look, the guards of the City of Dawn are all human and half-elf ladies. Those long legs. I want to touch them. Ah, a white light flashed. It was already cold. Chapter 121. Just as William had expected, there were about 40,000 to 50,000 players outside the City of Dawn. These new players were queuing up to enter the city or appeared in the city. The other two human nations were the same. There were about 40,000 to 50,000 players. There were only 15 players in the first batch of the open beta. In the following year, the number of Chinese players would reach 300,000, and the number of global players would reach millions. William's display of skills during the game's closed beta had attracted a large group of players. As the natives had received news from the heavens, they were very curious about the chosen ones. They observed the players' every move as if they were monkeys. After all, the players were jumpy. Some of them started dancing on the street. They swayed, kicked, and spun. One of the winged players had broken his wings because he did not manage to take them off. In the end, the player made up his mind and tore off his wings. He killed himself and turned into a ray of white light that disappeared into the sky. He left behind a bag of money, which was snatched up by a large group of players. The NPCs were in awe of the player's suicide. They praised the players for being awesome. The winged player who had broken his wings revived after a while. He danced on the streets again, not caring about the money that he had lost. He seemed to be a tycoon. Players, freedom is the truth. Standing on the streets is the hard truth. William expressed his understanding. But isn't it a little too early to be standing on the streets? At least become professionals and get a set of little orange equipment before standing on the street. Fortunately, not all the players were wandering. Some impatient fellows were already looking for missions. When the civilians realized that the guards did not stop the chosen ones from running around, they were slightly relieved. They continued to observe in secret, because they realized that this group of players had a perverted desire to help. It was as if they would commit suicide if they were not allowed to help. In a short period of time, the civilians could only issue many missions. At the entrance of the mercenary team in the City of Dawn, Chongli Jyoga and Angry Pig met again. As veteran players of the closed beta, they wanted to confirm if they still belonged to the Dawn mercenary team. The result was obvious. They were still members of the Dawn mercenary team. But because of their levels, they could not take on any missions. They could only regain their previous identities after becoming professionals. Let's level up first. When the time comes, the professional players of the Glory Club will join the Dawn Mercenary Guild. Chongli Jyoga once again confirmed the benefits of the mercenary group and left. He planned to look for some missions so that he could level up to level 10 and change his occupation. Angry Piglet's eyes lit up. That's a big move. You're staking everything on one throw. What about the subordinate guilds of your club? It doesn't matter if I tell you. Of course, I have to join. After Chongli Jyoga finished speaking, he ran away. A total of 40,000 to 50,000 players had gathered in the City of Dawn. They were doing all sorts of simple quests. After all, the City of Dawn's construction missions had never stopped. Hence, the incompetent players could only choose to accept these missions. As for doing hard labor, the players expressed that this was the basic operation. Moving bricks, moving wood, moving wine, all of them were very diligent. This kind of hard-working spirit touched many NPCs. Many people thought that these chosen ones were unlucky kids from some poor place. Speaking of which, the NPCs in the City of Dawn are very powerful. An elf player sighed as he moved bricks. Exactly. There are many high-level NPCs on the street. Oh yes, have you gone to the south of the city? It's full of elves. I used a bunch of insight and found out that they are all bosses with hidden information. There are silver-haired elves and black-haired elves. These elves didn't exist during the game's closed beta. I know that the silver-haired elves are moonlight elves. There's an elven princess on the tallest tree. Someone suddenly leaked the secret. In an instant, many players gathered around and whispered to each other. They seemed to want to link this information to the promotional animation. Meanwhile, the players were also discussing it on the forum. Because the players of the City of Dawn had started a war with the players of the human nations. The reason was that the City of Dawn seemed to be a little unusual to a certain extent. The representative of the City of Dawn said, "I bought a watch last year. There are very few high-level NPCs in the human cities. Why are you complaining about the City of Dawn? Why are you asking the gods to change the game? Why don't you go to the toilet and kill yourself? Look at the population of the human nations. There is only one city in the City of Dawn. There are more high-level NPCs. Isn't that wrong?" The representative of the Iron Nation said, "My charm is exploding. I have already found out that the Iron Nation and the City of Dawn have a grudge. Just wait and see." The representative of the Black Lava Nation said, "I also feel that there are more high-level NPCs in the City of Dawn. We should complain about them. But you should understand after watching the promotional animation. In version 1.0, there are 3 main characters in the War of the Kings. It is obviously a battle between the 3 nations. Let's meet on the battlefield. Don't be afraid." An intense war of words started. The players did not have any sense of belonging and resonance with their spawn point. But it did not mean that the people from the novice villages could complain, scold, or even nag. In conclusion, the players of the City of Dawn could scold their own city, but the rest of the people could not. It was the same logic as university students could scold their alma mater, but other students could not. William was watching the war of words on the forum with great interest. He felt that this group of players was worth nurturing, but he could not be too eager. Hence, 3 days after the open beta of the game started, William, the Lord of the City of Dawn, the Dragon Slayer, and the Elfin Prince, officially appeared at the central square. He even made an announcement at the city gate. It was a regional megaphone that gathered all the players. A group of novice players, who were still wearing their novice clothes, saw the megaphone and knew that a big mission was coming. They rushed to the central square in group. They also saw a handsome elf standing on a high platform waiting for them. When some female players saw William, they could not help but scream, "So handsome, so handsome. This is my husband, this is my husband. Get lost, you be *tch. Draw your sword. He is my man." A strong man laughed coldly and looked at the city lord with a passionate gaze. When William saw this scene, he was expressionless, but his heart twitched. When he saw that the number of players was almost enough, he said in a clear voice, "Chosen ones, after 3 days of observation, I can see that you are capable, hard-working, and positive talents. In particular, your courage to not fear death has won my recognition. I wonder if you are willing to help me?" At the same time, a mission that William had prepared long ago was announced. Help to build a city. The Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf, thinks that all of you are poor children who have been abandoned by the heavens. He wants to build a new home for all of you, but he does not have enough manpower. He needs you to build a new city with the NPCs personally. Mission difficulty. C-first round of mission. Build a small nest of your own. Mission reward. 3,000 experience. Gosh, it's a chain mission? The first round of mission is so awesome. Someone could not help but shout. Gosh, the missions given by the Lord are awesome. I carry bricks, send messages, and dig herbs for a day, but I only get 1,000 experience. I'm only level 3 now. The experience for this round of mission is amazing. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's form a team. Is there anyone who wants to build a new home with me? I can help you unlock various positions. When William saw tens of thousands of players choosing to accept the mission, he finally revealed a gratified smile. What was this kind of mission called? It was called Binding Tactics. To keep the hearts of the players, it was better to give them a small nest first. One had to know that the players recognized having their own home in the game. Moreover, they did not need to spend money to buy it. They could build it themselves and have a greater sense of belonging. Of course, the players definitely did not know how to build houses. But with the help of the NPCs to design the blueprints, they could continue to carry bricks. Subsequently, William was like a normal NPC. He stood calmly on the high platform in the central square, waiting for batches of players to accept the mission. Chapter 122. William had thought that the players would obediently carry bricks after receiving the mission. But he had underestimated the curiosity of the players. The group of newbies did not care whether he was the city lord or not. They boldly walked up to the platform and even had the urge to touch him. Fortunately, the dignity of the Lord could not be violated. Before William could say anything, the two guards had already pulled out their swords with cold expressions. "TSK, I have to say that the Lord's looks are comparable to mine." After observing William, a player could not help but complain. "Brother, go home and look in the mirror. If your face is not 20% uglier, your gaming capsule will be filled with the stench of blood for the rest of your life." A few players scolded him and started to admire William's beauty from a close distance. As many players were not crazy about leveling up, there were many male and female players in the City of Dawn. They had watched the live broadcasts and videos and realized that the scenery of the City of Dawn was extremely beautiful. Moreover, there were many elves, so they decided to stay here. Of course, the key was William's looks. He had become the signboard of the City of Dawn. Some female players did not dare to get close to William. They walked to the side and took pictures or even videos. Then, they did some kissing and hugging poses. When William's guards saw this scene, they could only endure it. As the Lord did not say anything and seemed to be enjoying it, they could not be bothered to do anything. The City Lord smiled but did not say anything. From the beginning of the 21st century, some NPCs would have their own fans, and the audience was not small. There was the Sword Net 3 Shinjinshin from hundreds of years ago, the ruler of Stormwind City in the world of Warcraft. Anduin Wrynn there was the Black Star from the Galaxy game more than 10 years ago. In short, William's goal was to become an idle and main character NPC. He could also take advantage of this opportunity to increase his exposure to the entire forum. After all, he had no choice. As one of the three main characters of version 1.0, William was not only the easiest to appear, but he was also the most handsome. Naturally, many people would be interested in him. Gerda Nassis and the Crown Prince of the Black Lava Dukedom were secretly observing the players. They did not dare to show themselves. For the entire afternoon, William allowed people to take pictures and videos in the square. He also assigned missions to the players who had just gone online. It wasn't until nightfall that he left with his two personal guards. Of course, missions could still be accepted, but they needed to go to the notice at the city gate or the announcement hall. Both of these places were good places to receive quests. Other than that, he could go to the NPCs to receive missions. Of course, he could also get close to William. The sky gradually darkened. The stars were bright, and two blue moons hung high in the sky. The moment the sun set, tens of thousands of magic lamps lit up at the same time. The entire city instantly turned into a brightly lit city that never slept. Many players had exhausted their stamina from carrying bricks, so they decided to take a break. They looked around happily. They felt that the scenery of the City of Dawn was amazing. The trees on both sides of the street were covered with magic lamps, which shone on the flowers below, creating an extraordinary scene. There were many players taking photos, videos, and live streaming. After all, it was a good choice to take a short break and become a scenery lover. TSK. Look at the players in the King's City of the Human Dukedom. They still have the nerve to take photos and post them on the forum. There isn't even a toilet on the street. The streets are filled with urine and feces. This is only the third day of the open beta, and at least thousands of people have been robbed by NPCs. Some unlucky fellows have been captured by mages to be used as experiment materials. In comparison, the City of Dawn is still better. A 5-man team chatted as they strolled on the street. The others agreed with what they said. There was a lot of information about the two dukedoms. There were many commoners, slaves, and legions, but the overall quality was much worse than the City of Dawn. Of course, William is the Prince of the Elves. His words and actions are definitely better than those of the humans. An elven player laughed. The other 4 glanced at him as if he was not a human. One of the girls could not help but say, "Does it feel good to level up with double experience points?" The elven player's mouth twitched. He was only level 5, while the others were level 7. But he still stubbornly said, "It's enough that my attributes are strong." Also, haven't you noticed that I'm even more handsome? Furthermore, the missions in the City of Dawn give much more experience than the missions in other places. That's true. But the elves in the human dukedom are in trouble. Sigh, there's a tycoon on the forum who wants to buy gold coins at a high price. He plans to go to the casino 100 times. Let's go and take a look. Gosh, let's go. We have to take a look. There were many entertainment activities at night in the City of Dawn, especially after the military fortress was completely occupied. The city gates were no longer closed, and many NPCs would hold bonfire parties outside the city. From time to time, some players would shamelessly go over to have a few drinks. In the end, they received a notification. The NPC's affinity with you has plummeted, of course. Not only could the new players leave the city, but they could also choose to walk around the city to find hidden missions. Among them was Moses from the fortune-telling shop. The legendary boss, who had been hiding in a tomb, was successfully discovered by the players. Hence, the forum was filled with complaint. The City of Dawn has to be weakened. This is the second legendary boss. Who knows what kind of relationship he has with the Lord of the City of Dawn? The City of Dawn representative said, "Just because you can't eat the grapes, you're complaining. There are many legendary bosses in the City of Dawn. Epic bosses are everywhere, and grandmasters are like dogs. You can be jealous, but you can complain all day, but the officials of the gods don't seem to care about you. Don't be noisy. If you're unhappy, just fight. My Black Lava Nation is not afraid of anyone," the Black Lava Nation representative said. Bystanders said, "Brother, do you see anyone caring about your Black Lava Nation?" The Black Lava Nation representative was speechless. The casino in the City of Dawn was once again filled with players. A tycoon wanted to spin the small wheel 100 times, which was equivalent to 100 gold coins. According to the current market price, this tycoon had spent at least 10,000 gold coins to collect so many gold coins from the poor players. Angry Fatty was also very interested. He started a live broadcast and leisurely ran over. He wanted to see how lucky the other players were. This tycoon's name was very domineering. It was called "What Can You Do Against Me?" He had chosen the Elven race and had reached level 6. According to the difficulty of leveling up in the Elven race, he was a very hard-working person. When What Can You Do Against Me saw that there were enough players, he felt even more satisfied. He went to the entrance of the casino and boasted, "Take out your small wheel. I'm going to spin 100 times today." The eyes of the casino attendant lit up. It was rare to see such a fat sheep. He did not stand on ceremony and took out the small wheel. After the dirty money transaction, the attendant stretched out his hand and squinted his eyes, indicating that he could start. Therefore, What Can You Do Against Me started spinning wildly as the players shouted wildly, 100 bronze coins, 1 gold coin, 10 silver coins, 10 silver coins, 10 silver coins, 100 bronze coins, beginner close combat blue helmet. 10 silver coins. After spinning 100 times, What Can You Do Against Me was left with 13 gold coins. However, he had successfully obtained 1 piece of silver equipment and 5 pieces of blue equipment. However, he could not equip them for the time being. The casino attendant smiled and told him that he could temporarily keep the equipment in the casino. There would definitely be no accidents. Therefore, the small wheel in the casino became popular once again. The players who went to the blacksmith shop discovered that the silver equipment in the blacksmith shop cost at least 200 gold coins. What Can You Do Against Me used 100 gold coins to obtain 1 piece of silver equipment and 5 pieces of blue equipment. This was a huge profit in a short period of time. A large group of players started to play with the small wheel. After all, the large wheel cost 10 gold coins to play once. No one could afford it,